Release under the terms of the agreement, Kayyem Labs will test cannabis samples to identify cannabinoid profiles, biological contaminants, chemical contaminants like pesticides, solvents, and heavy metals, as well as the presence of unauthorized additives. Services are critical to the Cannabis Control Commission's enforcement and oversight of the industry. It is a 2-year agreement with the option for 2 additional 2-year renewals. And nothing lasts forever, especially at the clothing retailer Forever 21. Company officials say it had no choice but to file for bankruptcy and begin liquidating all of its 359 stores nationwide. There are 11 Forever 21 stores in Massachusetts. All are being liquidated and shut down. Company CEO Brad Sell says they'll continue to hunt for a buyer that can rescue the brand from being sold off in parts. In sports, the Celtics host the Nets at the Garden tonight. Exhibition baseball, Red Sox play the Yankees this afternoon. Professional women's hockey, it's the Fleet hosting Montreal. 44 degrees in Boston. This is GBH News.
Support for NPR comes from NPR stations. Other contributors include CFP, Certified Financial Planner Professionals, committed to acting in their clients' best interests. Learn more at letsmakeaplan.org. And the listeners who support this NPR station.
Eastern Friday, I am Marjorie Egan. You're listening to Boston Public Radio, 89.7 GBH. We are broadcasting live from the Boston Public Library. Thank you, and streaming at youtube.com/GBH News. At noon, we're going to be joined by Marty Baron, former Pulitzer Prize-winning editor of the Boston Globe and the Washington Post, on the trust issue that the media is facing in 2025. Good morning, Jim.
Hey there, Marjorie. How are you?
Fine, thanks.
So Boston is known for its history, the first subway system in the country, the start of the revolution, first library. Unfortunately, much of its infrastructure and systems remain from that era, including the process for renting an apartment. Even with the rise of online listings easily accessible to everybody, many renters are still shelling out a month's worth of rent for a broker on top of the last month's rent, on top of a security deposit. And after New York City late last year outlawed tenant-paid brokers' fees, Greater Boston, listen to this, is the only major urban center in America that still charges them. So our question to listeners, we did this a few months ago, but decided to do it again because the legislature is dithering, as they have done on many things, is on the heels of a Globe article profiling a 22-year-old broker. Have rental brokers and their fees overstayed their welcome, especially given the quality of some units in the market? How are we still justifying people dishing out the equivalent of a down payment on a house they have no equity in? Or are you a broker or someone who has used a broker and likes the current system, and you think there's value in this? And we should say, one other thing, which is really not much of a conversation for discussion, except with me and Marjorie, the reason we're waiting on the legislature, New York City passed this in New York City. Did they have to ask the New York legislature for its permission?
They did not.
Because of home rule petitions.
Right.
Boston wants it. Somerville wants it.
Yep.
Cambridge wants it.
Just like rent control.
They need the permission of a legislature, 1/4 of whom, according to Globe reporting last year, own multiple units or property, and 86% of whom own their own homes. So there's not a huge amount of interest in getting rid of the broker's
Let's get
fees.
a little detail. There's one real estate attorney, this is according to great reporting by Matt Stout and Emma Platoff in the Globe. One state senator, real estate attorney, owns $42 million worth of properties. Then another one owns dozens of apartments in the Merrimack Valley. And then there's this one Methuen Democrat who has so much real estate, at least 25 properties, that when the Globe asked for a tally, he kind of struggled and he said, well, I don't keep count.
Yeah. Because he can't count that high. By the way, to be clear, since we're often critical of the legislature, the Senate did approve the elimination of these brokers' fees in the housing bond bill last year. The House resisted. So the Senate deserves credit here. But again, the bottom line is, why do they even need approval of the legislature? It's because we have this antiquated home rule thing. But the bottom line is, we had a great discussion when we did this 4 or 5 or 6 months ago. A lot of you called in who were real estate brokers who said you performed an important function in renting units in the city. You made a compelling case. Didn't persuade me, but obviously there are two sides to this thing, I guess.
Well,
so we want to hear from all sides at 877-301-8970, not just on brokers' fees, but how you feel about the legislature unable to do something that, at least to a majority of people, seems to be pretty basic.
Well, this is one of my recurring themes post the election of
What's that?
2024 and going into 2025, that one of the problems in democratically run cities and states that takes us forever to do stuff that is so obvious, and this is fairly obvious, I think, to most people, perhaps except for real estate brokers.
You are so unfair.
I'm so unfair.
Excuse me. Are most cities in the United States Democratic? The answer is yes.
Yes.
Do most cities, meaning every city except ours, did they eliminate these brokers' fees?
They
yes.
did.
So apparently that hasn't been an obstacle anywhere except here.
The housing crisis is really big in mostly Democratic-run cities, and I don't think.
But they're dealing with it. They got rid of this.
They did. Well, that's not the whole story, Jim.
What is the whole story?
Well, the prices of housing. It's not enough housing for people. But anyway, this is another great story from the Globe. This one is Andrew Brinker, and he follows around this 22-year-old kid who's one of these real estate brokers. So they go to this apartment. I think it's was it in the Back Bay? No, it was in the Symphony neighborhood. And first, the broker can't find the apartment. Then it was down, behind some bushes somewhere. And he finally finds the apartment. And they go in there and to leave these 3 kids around the apartment because they're looking for a 3-bedroom. And the place smells vaguely of cat urine. And there's a bunch of pipes running across the ceiling that may or may not transport the building's sewage. But the broker, this McDonald kid, explains that if they want a 3-bedroom for about $4,500 a month, this is about the most spacious they can find. And at one point, I guess the reporter, Andrew Brinker, overhears one of the students saying, as he watches the broker run around in anticipation of the $4,500 he may get at the end of this transaction, we're expected to pay this guy?
Well, by the way, speaking of pay this guy, let's do the math. First month, last month, security deposit, broker's fee.
18 grand.
No, 24,000.
Is it?
22,000.
Is it 22,000?
4 times 4,500. It's a lot of money, whatever it is.
4 times 4,500.
It's a lot of money. By the way, we got a text from somebody on a topic that has absolutely nothing to do with this, but it's so good we thought we'd read it. Remember we had Sonny Williams on the show from the International Space Station months ago. Here's the text. The 2 delayed astronauts are due to land in the Gulf of Mexico or the Gulf of America. I hope NASA updated the GPS in the capsule.
That's right. Oh, my goodness. You know what's going to happen? If
they won't let them land.
Exactly.
Exactly.
The Gulf of America, that's it. They're going to be hovering around forever.
301-8970. Dylan and JP texts, brokers' fees have definitely overstayed their welcome. We had to dip into our long-term savings to shell out thousands of dollars. It's simply another way to squeeze hard-earned money from everyday citizens. I guess my question, and then we'll get to the calls, from those who support the brokers' fees. And there were some very, I think, credible calls, even though you and I disagreed, from people who supported the fees. If they make sense, why has every single other major city in the country decided they didn't make sense? Why are we the outlier?
Right, and a lot of them that have decided against this have the landlords pay the fee, or maybe a partial fee instead of the exact same amount as the first month, last month, and security department. I mean, they talk about it in this Globe story that people say that, it makes it easier when you have a licensed broker there, makes the rental go more smoothly, and, that it's more cost effective for everybody involved.
By the way, I do agree that it goes more smoothly from the days when I was renting here ages ago. But the answer is let the landlord pay it then. And you know, for those who say the landlord's just going to pass this
Increase
fee
on.
along, well, if they could cause the rent to be higher anyway, they would. And if they can't, then they can't add the broker's fee. So I'm not worried about that. But let's start with Richie in Brookline. You're first on Boston Public Radio. Welcome to the show, Richie. Hi.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Guys, you know I love you. I've called in before. I need to make a correction.
Please.
And Marjorie, you as a journalist need to really know this. This kid is not a broker. He is a real estate agent. A broker is a specific thing who us as real estate agents affiliate with. And so, and Andrew, the journalist who did the article, is just one of many people. I am a real estate agent. I am not a broker.
So
I have
hold
to
on. I don't
pay
get
my
the
broker.
Oh, you're saying that the agents pay the broker. Okay, that's what you're saying?
The broker, we have to be affiliated with a brokerage to be a practicing real estate agent. You can't just be an agent, get licensed, and go out there on your own. So there's a lot of that's incorrectly handled in articles.
Okay, we stand corrected.
But I
How about the merits of the argument? Let's get to
But
the
I
merits.
don't get what
Bigger
Richie's.
issue.
I don't get what Richie's saying.
Well,
though.
whatever. Let's talk about the merits of
all right.
the fee. Go ahead, Richie.
Okay. As a real estate agent who's done rentals for a number of years here and had kids who've rented here, I think it sucks that tenants have to pay, in many cases, have to pay it just because the landlord has hired an agent and that agent is charging the fee. I completely agree that if the landlord hires an agent to represent their apartment, the landlord should offer at least half of the fee or even the entire fee. How they figure it out in what they charge for rent, that's another issue. On the other hand, I get a lot of prospective Boston renters contact me through my social media or my agent listing that's out there on the internet. And if I'm doing the work and doing the searches for you and going out and checking out places, shooting video to send you because you and your
Don't you deserve to get
roommates
paid?
who
Well,
live in other
Richie, I can answer your question. If it turns out that fees are outlawed, you're not going to have one other tenant hires you because you're not going to work for nothing. But the question I'll ask you is the question I posed before we took your call. Why is it that situation that you describe has not been a problem in every other major city in the country and apparently is only a problem in Boston and surrounding communities? I don't get it.
Well, let me correct something you said, though, Jim, and you as a lawyer should know this. The fees are not outlawed in other cities.
No, they
If
are
a
in
tenant
some. In others,
contacts-
they can only be charged to whoever hires the broker.
And by the way, Richie, this young man in the story calls himself a broker.
Yeah.
So, I mean,
But Richie, can you
but
just
I think
answer
we're
my
arguing-
question instead of correcting us? We stand corrected. Thank you.
Well, not on the broker part.
But I don't care. Can we just get to the issue? Why has every other community been happy here, and we're the ones that should be the outliers? Can you answer it briefly?
No, I don't know. I think it's been the SOP here for years.
Okay,
and
it has.
And it's been gotten away with. I really don't know. But
Okay,
I
we
do
appreciate.
agree.
We got to go. We really appreciate your call, and thank you. Call us again, Richie. By the way, math is my strong suit, and
Yeah.
an anonymous texter said, "Jim, wrong again," and he's right. I was thinking it was 5 months rent. 4 months rent at $4,500 is $18,000. So we've only made 9 mistakes in the first 4 minutes of the show.
You know, with all due respect to
Oh,
Richie,
forget that. Forget that.
Yeah, I
It's
don't think that
ridiculous.
was a mistake.
877-301-8970. And if you want to make corrections, call another number. We want to talk about whether or not you think brokers' fees should continue to be charged to tenants in Massachusetts. And we want to know how you feel about the legislature. This is Marjorie's, and I'm with Marjorie on this. There is no sense of urgency about almost anything. This is so straightforward. It's either a good idea, in which case, like the Senate did, the House should go along with them, or it's a bad idea, in which case they should vote it down and explain it to their
I guess
constituents.
the thing is, what is the holdup here? This is we had, as you said before, Karen Spilka, give her credit, in the Senate. They got this through the Senate. But what is the holdup here? Housing is the biggest crisis we have,
It
right?
is.
We can't get in the Cambridge, Boston, and Somerville. They wanted rent control before it was gotten rid of before. A lot of those people in those towns still want it. What's holding that up? The state legislature, once again. So, I mean, people wonder why people get fed up, because nothing gets done. 877-301-8970 is the number, 877-301-8970. And I got to tell you, though, it sounds like this guy really works hard. And he does. He's a 22-year-old kid.
Whether he's a broker or an agent, he works
that's
hard.
right.
Yeah.
He crushes energy drinks instead of coffee and has empty cans littering his car's floorboards. He fires off text messages at red lights because he says time is money. He hopes to make these leasing rentals into investment properties. Tragically, the $4,500 for this basement that smelled of cat urine, it didn't go to him in the end. No, it didn't. And maybe that's why he's still living with his parents in New Hampshire.
Did you watch the video that came with the story? Most real estate brokers or agents who are crushing these energy drinks, they crush them on their forehead. Do you know that? They just take the empty thing, they do it against their, just to show.
Well, he's a hardworking young man. I mean, I don't mean to criticize this young guy.
Well, can I say this?
Hard.
I know a lot of brokers, agents, whatever they are, in Cambridge. Almost every one of them they're young for the most part, and they work hard and they provide a service. The issue is, in this kind of a rental market, can we afford to have tenants having to pay an extra month for this?
No.
And I think the answer is no. I mean, that's the deal.
The real problem is the legislature won't change this so that the issue goes away.
Okay, here are a few texts. You want to read a few texts? You're the text reader. Go ahead.
This is from Eric in Arlington. What is the logic that says a broker fee should be proportional to the amount of rent? They do no more work showing a more expensive apartment than a less expensive one.
That's a very good question.
That is a very good point.
Yeah.
Here's Taryn from Newton. If brokers and real estate agents are doing a service, they're doing it for the landlord. They are hired by the landlord and work on behalf of the landlord. They should be paid by the landlord, and that's how it goes in some of these other cities.
That's correct.
Besides Boston. And here's an anonymous texter who says, maybe if we didn't have the most corrupt state legislature in the country, things would actually get done. I don't know if they're the most corrupt. I wouldn't go that far.
Well, I mean, maybe not now, but as we know, for especially young listeners, we did set the all-time record, 3 felonious speakers in a row. I don't think any other state has ever had 3
we do have
guilty
a record.
of felonies.
We do have a
in
record.
A row.
Yeah, that's pretty impressive. So far it hasn't happened with we skipped at least 2, right?
Well, no, after DeLeo, it ended with DeLeo.
And then we have Mariano.
Flaherty, Finneran, and who was
DeMacy.
DeMacy, exactly. Nick and JP, welcome to the show. We're talking about brokers' fees and whether or not they should be eliminated. Hey there.
Hey, how's it going?
Good.
Good.
So the first thing I want to say is I really like the argument that the person who hires the broker should be responsible for the fee. Mm-hmm. That makes the most sense to me.
Yeah.
It may, yeah.
But I also think that it's important we consider some sort of a flat fee. And what is the fee? Is it for submitting paperwork? Is it for giving the tour? Because if you're touring a 10-bedroom mansion versus a 2-bedroom, 1-bathroom apartment, that should be a different price. However, a flat fee might be better, and an itemized list of what those fees are being paid for would be interesting to hear.
Well, Nick, I have to say, your notion as a compromise, if this would speed this along, it seems to me makes sense, which is whoever hires the broker, if they don't have the courage to get rid of the fee altogether, at least on the tenant side, if a tenant hires, as that first caller said, then maybe they should pay. And if a landlord hires, which is the case in 90+% of the cases, they pay. Nick, good thinking. By the way, I just said how young and hardworking they are. An anonymous texter says, hey, drug dealers are young and work hard too, Jim. And renters paying. That's a fine point.
And another texter or somebody sent this in.
What's that?
Who knows what's really going on in that cigar room in the North End?
Explain it.
And this was another great story by the Boston Globe. I mean, people criticize the media. Does the Globe not do a lot of great muckraking reporting?
They do.
Anyway, they talked about how there's this cigar bar in the North End, and you have to go in. I don't know if you have to go through a secret door.
I've been there. It's not a secret door.
It's not a secret
door. But
okay.
it's quite
nice. It's not
nice.
like a speakeasy. And you go down down a flight of stairs, and they have these pours of Remy Martin, that very fancy after-dinner drink, like for 80 and 90
Expensive
bucks.
cigars.
And legislators hang around there, but we don't, and they can spend their campaign funds there, right?
They can.
So that means that they can entertain, they can wine and dine a bunch of people. And we never know who the people that they are
We're
wining
not
and dining
entitled
are.
to know.
They could be real estate
They
developers.
could be.
They could be brokers. They're probably not the average Joe and Jane, and they hang out there and ingratiate themselves with each other, and deals are done. The problem is that we should probably know who
Well,
they
you know who
are
else they could be?
meeting with.
They could also be that legislator whose girlfriend is a lobbyist, who he.
Oh, yeah. Tell that
he,
story.
He never discussed ever. What's his name again, Jamie? Can you remind me? What's his name? This is the legislator who was chair of the committee that was considering whether or not third-party electric suppliers should be outlawed. The outlawing of it was supported only by the governor, the attorney general, and virtually every organization. But his girlfriend, with whom he never discussed the bill, was the chief lobbyist
That was his claim.
for the third-party energy suppliers. And lo and behold, the bill was killed.
That's right.
And he was punished by being elevated in the House leadership by the speaker.
Okay.
It's just unbelievable.
It's
Jeff Roy,
Jeff
thank
Roy.
you.
That's right. He was
Jeff
put
Roy.
into leadership, and of course his girlfriend got a pretty nice commission from that whole operation.
But
as
they
well.
never talked about it.
They never talked about it. That's right.
Never
they never
talked about
discussed it.
What a coincidence. But they never
Oh boy.
talked about it.
You know, we're in tough shape here, I tell you.
But you know what
Walter,
the problem
what's
is?
the
I mean,
problem?
for all of you Democrats out there, I know you don't like this. The problem is that there's
no
there's
Republicans.
total job security. When there are virtually no Republicans and almost no primary challenges, and you know you're not going to lose your job, what you do is you do whatever the boss, the House Speaker or the Senate President, tells you to do. And like little sheep, they give you stipends to be chairs of committees that never meet. Another great Globe story.
Yeah, what is
These
somebody-
people chair committees and they never meet.
And they
They
can't-
never hold a hearing. They never report a bill out, and they're getting $15,000, $30,000.
Just wasn't one of them getting 60?
Yeah,
the
for
other
two
day?
committees, chairing two committees that didn't meet.
Two committees.
Well, actually, if they don't meet, you can chair 10 committees, actually. Why limit? It is really, and then they talk about they're going to be transparent. I mean, really. I mean,
This is why 72% of voters in Massachusetts wanted to audit the legislature. Diana DeSaga, the state ordered this bill because they
and
know
the other 28% work at the legislature.
they know there's something fishy going on
Yeah.
in those cigar
Okay, fine.
bars. They want to get to the
Okay.
bottom of it.
By the way, did you ever go to one of those cigar bars?
No, I did not.
You know who took me? Remember our former colleague Joe, the guy from Boston? Was that his name?
Joe, the guy from Boston.
Who had
He
his own table there. And I have to say, deep, thick leather benches where you sit.
They were red.
I don't
weren't
know
they?
from
red
fine.
leather?
I don't know about cigars. I had one. I mean,
Very
it just,
good Cuban cigars,
I don't
no
know
doubt.
but it's
Are
rather
those illegal Cuban cigars?
it's
I don't
rather
know.
nice, yeah.
Okay. We're
But
talking-
if you take your girlfriend there, who's a lobbyist, just make sure you do not discuss her caseload.
That's
okay?
right. And no one will ever know. You've been meeting with her. It's very dark in those
Yeah.
cigar bars. And what goes on in cigar bars, Jim, stays in
Jamie
cigar
just wrote
bars.
us a note. What exactly is the topic you're discussing? We forgot. It's broker's fees. It's not the cigar bar. We occasionally get off topic here, but it's relevant. The cigar bar is relevant.
We're talking actually about people getting ripped off on these brokers' fees in the city of Boston.
Mm-hmm.
You're listening to Boston Public Radio 89.7 GBH live from the Boston Public Library and streaming at youtube.com/GBH News.
I'm Jared Bowen. Today on The Culture Show, Boston's greatest unsolved mystery and the world's largest art heist. Today marks the 35th anniversary of the Isabella Stewart Gardner Museum theft when 13 works of art totaling hundreds of millions of dollars were stolen. We'll talk to the museum's directors of both security and conservation about the reverberations of the theft and what it means to move on. Tune in for that and more on The Culture Show today at 2 on 89.7 GBH.
Our programs are made possible thanks to you.
And Atlantic Design Center by Eldridge Lumber and Hardware, committed to helping you achieve your vision for a new kitchen or bathroom and guiding you from design to completion with showrooms in York and Portland, Maine. AtlanticDesignCTR.com. And Supermicro and NVIDIA, accelerating AI with a wide range of AI servers and the NVIDIA AI Enterprise software platform. Supermicro is committed to driving AI infrastructure breakthroughs with rack-scale innovations.
Welcome back to Boston Public Radio. Jim Browdy, Mark Regan. We're live at the library, streaming youtube.com/GBH News. If you're just tuning in, we're talking about broker's fees, rental broker's fees, a month in most cases, and whether or not the legislature should outlaw them like virtually every other city in America, at least tenant-paid brokers' fees. The Senate approved the elimination in the housing bond bill last year. The House did not agree. We want to hear your position on either side. We're also talking about cigar bars in the North End. And if any of you, well, maybe I shouldn't go into that, but here is a note from Zoe, which is a really good one, our coworker.
Yep.
My favorite is when you go tour an apartment and the current tenants are still there, and they give you that wide-eyed head shake no, as in, do not rent this apartment. Them I trust, Zoe writes. Broker, not so much.
You know, Zoe's got a great point. When you see, if you or any of your kids, or you know people that live in Austin, Brighton, or almost any part of the city in an apartment, Cambridge and Somerville are just as bad, and they're charging $4,000, and you cannot believe what dumps these places are. I mean, the wood is cracked, the vestibules are filthy. It's unbelievable what goes on around
Well,
here.
here's Benjamin in Brighton's text disappeared. Here it is, his text in Brighton. Looking for an apartment right now, fill out an online application. Realtor contacts you with a list of apartments, which you can find yourself on their website, then offers to charge you a month's rent for the effort. You know, we're making light of this in some ways, which we're not intending to. Take that $4,500 apartment where I did the wrong math. First month, last month, security deposit, broker's fee, $18,000.
Yeah,
who can afford $18,000?
Well, I think each kid has to hit up their parents or somebody in their family, or take out a loan or something.
Can I ask another question?
Poor Walter. Let's go to Walter.
No, but this is a really important question.
Walter
I think we need to answer. Walter will get there.
Sorry.
Can you pay, if you were a state legislator, for example, and you took, I don't know, your girlfriend who was a lobbyist for an industry to the cigar bar in the North End on your office campaign, would you or would you not talk about her clients? That's what we want to know from people.
I think that you might talk about your clients.
I don't think so.
Some would say it's a very convenient relationship for the lobbyists to be involved with someone up at the...
I don't think they talk about it.
Okay. I don't think they talk about it.
I don't think they talk about it. Walter in Swampscott, finally you made it. Hi, Walter.
What do you think, Walter? What do you think, Walter?
Folks. Hi, folks. I'm calling in with a perspective of being both a property owner, bought my first property in July of '79, I've owned properties in Massachusetts and California, I've sold everything now, and I'm a renter. So the broker, my issue with the broker fee on both sides of the equation. First, the tenant should not be paying it. It's a landlord thing. Second, for the landlord side, unless you've got like 600 units where you can't possibly be showing them all the time, you pay a fee to somebody else to do it. But if you're not there, what the broker provides is nothing. They'll slam anybody in that apartment to get that fee, and you end up with really sketchy tenants.
Yeah.
I personally am a very hands-on landlord. When I was a landlord, I think I've spoke to you guys about this before. I would do my own walkthroughs, sizing up the applicant, and I would always escort them back to their car, and if their car's a mess, they're a mess.
That's a good one, Walter.
Okay.
Great call. Thanks for it. We appreciate it.
Thank you for the call. If you don't want to hear some text, if you don't want to pay a broker fee, don't use a broker. I've been a landlord for 30 years. I've never used a broker, and none of my tenants have ever paid a fee. Listen to this next one from Julia on the Mass Pike. When I rented an apartment in Brooklyn, I had to pay a finder's fee equal to a full month's rent, even though I rented directly from the owner,
incredible.
plus first and last month's rent and security fee.
That's got to be illegal.
Agent, or it probably is. It probably is. But
And they do it. What are you going to do? You say, I'm not going to pay it.
Yeah.
You challenge it, and by the time you challenge it, they've rented it to somebody else who is willing to pay the so-called, whatever the fee is called, because apartments are so scarce. By the way, Nina in Putnam, Connecticut says, Marjorie, I love that shirt.
This is, I'm very happy about
Apparently
this.
she didn't see
I'm very
my
happy
shirt.
about this. I rarely get compliments on my clothing, so there you go.
Nina, what do you think?
These are my
right
new
here.
shirts, Jim.
Thank you.
Yep.
Robin in the South End, we're talking about brokers' fees and whether the legislature will ever eliminate them. Hello there.
Hi.
Hi.
So I want to say I think it's great if the landlord pays fee, but oh, I'm sorry.
It's okay. We're not doing anything important.
I think
so
someone's
it's okay.
talking to Robin.
Okay.
Are you getting... Robin, maybe we'll put you on hold and talk to you a little bit later. But thank you for the call. Let's go to Blake on Cape Cod.
Hey,
Hi, Blake.
It's odd, but okay. Hello, Blake. Blake's calling Robin, apparently.
Hello?
Hi. Hi, Blake.
Hi, Blake. What's going on?
Oh.
Hi. You're on. This is like, you're on. You don't want to be on.
Hello?
Yeah,
Hello.
can you hear us,
Say,
Blake?
when we say hello, that means we hear you, and then you say, hi, love your show. Here's what I wanted to say. Go ahead.
Wait, hi, how are you?
I think I'm
Good,
fine.
good.
Love our
Okay.
show. Yep.
You ready? You want to say something?
Okay, it's going well so far,
Yeah.
Blake. Keep going.
Sorry.
It's okay.
My name is Blake.
We know that.
Came through wrong.
Yeah, you're on Cape Cod.
Anyway,
Okay.
yes, exactly. Cape
Yeah.
Cod. So you guys were talking about broker fees. So I'm a real estate broker.
Oh, good.
A career broker. Of course. Yep. And so one thing I just wanted to just highlight, there's a lot of hoopla about commissions in real estate.
Yeah.
I've been doing this since 2009, so a pretty long time.
Okay.
And I want you to understand the fiduciary duties of a broker, right? So a salesperson is an entry-level licensee, and a broker is someone who's been in the industry for a long time. So that's the differentiating factor. But when you are a licensed salesperson or broker, you have a fiduciary duty to serve your client. So you need to talk about mold, lead paint, asbestos. You need to understand inspections and laws and consumer protection.
Blake, if I may, though, assume everything you're saying is true. What's the relevance of that to whether or not a tenant should pay a fee for it?
Yeah, well, so, it's buyer beware is kind of the old saying. So once upon a time in history, there was things like net listings where the broker would say, I can sell you this place for $100 and we'll actually sell it for $150, take the whole thing. Right? So that was an example of brokers back in the day being very misbehaved.
Yeah, but Blake, if I may, because we're running out of time, even if your points made sense, I repeat what I've said several times, every other city in America, according to the Globe, has decided tenants will do just fine, in fact, better, without a broker or an agent or whatever you want to call it.
Well,
so why do we need them here in Massachusetts if nobody needs them anywhere else?
Well, to the other clients, what I would say is it should be up to the people. It should be up to you whether or not you want to hire a broker. So I don't think the state should be telling us how we should do it. I think that the client and the tenant...
We got it. We got to let you go because the connection is horrible. It's not about your content. But Blake is the second person who said that. The compromise for the law to change is to say whoever hires a broker, if anybody does, pays. And while I think that's not preferable to saying the tenants will not pay, if that's a compromise that could move more quickly through the slow-moving legislature, and let them do
There also
it.
could be a broker submitting a fee for service, depending on what they did. He's talked about all these extra things they might have to do at every apartment. A lot of times they're not doing anything at all. They're doing maybe credit checks on the tenant or something like that, but they're not doing all those things. And so it raises the question of how much do they need to be paid. But listen to this. Who's the guy that was dating the lobbyist? What was his name? Roy?
Jeff Roy, yeah.
In defense, this is from
dating the lobbyist.
This is from a sarcastic listener in Cambridge.
Okay, go ahead.
In defense of the lawmaker dating the lobbyist, they likely met while she was lobbying him. And perhaps he meant that he never talked about the issues in his capacity as her boyfriend and she the girlfriend, just in their capacity as lawmaker and lobbyist.
No, in all fairness, he said he didn't talk about it. By the way, much more importantly, Nate in Worcester says, Marjorie, I love your shirt too.
Oh, my goodness.
But I like
There we
Jim's even
go.
more. However, Jim,
Oh.
I think I see a mustard stain there. And what's your point, Nate? Yeah. So you see a mustard stain.
Yes.
Well, obviously it's because I ate mustard. So
Well, I would like to describe my shirt. I have a black shirt with big red flowers on
very,
it.
very
What do you
pretty.
think, Jim?
I think it's all right.
Thank you very much.
That's
Thank
nice.
you very much.
By the way, it was even better yesterday. I think it was really, it's really, it really wears on
I don't wear it
you.
every day.
Okay,
I don't wear
fine.
it every day.
We're
Okay,
done.
coming up, we're going to talk to Sports Authority Trenni Casey. She's going to talk about senior citizen Bill Belichick's Cirque du Soleil
That's not
moment
nice.
in the beach on the sand with his very, 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 very young girlfriend. You're listening to Boston Public Radio, 89.7 GBH, live from the Boston Public Radio, and streaming at
Library,
YouTube.
too.
Whoops. Live from the Boston Public Library and streaming at youtube.com/GBH News.
If your pet gets sick and needs medication, you go to the vet, right? Well, in Spain, it's not so simple.
Está inflamadito y tiene secreción.
A new Spanish law restricts the use of antibiotics to treat animals. We'll hear about the impact of that law next time on The World.
This afternoon at 3, here on GBH News 89.7.
Support for GBH comes from you.
And Direct Tire and Auto Service, offering a full range of services, including brakes, shocks, diagnostics, and AC work. Direct Tire and Auto Service. Not just service, customer service. DirectTire.com. And Compass on the Bay, an assisted living community in South Boston dedicated to those with Alzheimer's and related dementias, featuring research-based therapeutic programming. More at CompassOnTheBay.com.
Welcome back to Boston Public Radio. Mark Regan, Jim Brady, live at the library and streaming at youtube.com/GBH News. 1 o'clock, a lot of news locally, nationally, internationally. CNN's John King joins us. And at noon, Marty Baron, former editor of The Globe, former editor of The Washington Post, Pulitzer Prize winner. He joins us. We're joined now, though, at the library by Trenni Casey, anchor and reporter for NBC Sports Boston. Hello, Trenni.
Hi, guys.
How are you?
Great.
Well, we have a lot to talk about with you. March Madness and John Feinstein, the great sports reporter. But a lot of us were transfixed by, as I mentioned before, this sort of acrobatic Cirque du Soleil sort of moment where Bill Belichick is on the beach with the girlfriend.
Not the girlfriend. That's disrespectful.
Okay, his longtime girlfriend.
Exactly.
Are they getting married now? Is she a fiancé?
I don't know. And
we have pictures of this we're
posting.
Do we have
pictures?
They're really quite moving.
Look at that.
That is so lovely.
It's so weird.
So
okay.
You think so?
The pictures,
this is real, by the way.
Yeah,
this
is not like AI. This is not like Photoshopped. Like these are the things that his girlfriend is posting on Instagram.
Yeah.
Exactly. I don't know who just
Here's
said
somebody in the audience.
I know. I am with you. And it, honestly, guys, so last week
she's quite athletic.
She was a cheerleader at like a D2 or a D3 school. They were national champions. If you go to her Instagram page, you can see all about how proud she is to be a national champion cheerleader.
She's very skilled.
She's very skilled. What I think is odd, like all this stuff is weird, and I suppose it could be traced back to the fact that Belichick is trying to prove to everybody that he's like cool and hip and I can still coach in the NFL. Look how relatable I am to this granddaughter of mine who just happens to be my girlfriend.
That's not nice.
But you know what, Jim?
What?
If you're going to post pictures like that, you open yourself up. Like if you want to be a quiet couple who does things, fine. Then go be a quiet couple who does things. There's no one holding a gun to your head. That's like, you know what?
Exactly.
Pose on the beach in a Cirque du Soleil, mold, and then just have everyone go, oh, isn't it sweet that they're so in love? Like, no, it's not happening. Yeah. But the thing that makes me question what's going on the most is that it was reported, I think like a week and a half ago, that Bill Belichick had sent out an email. Someone had asked him something about like a visit or something, and he said, going forward, please CC Jordan, I think her last name's Hudson or something. Yeah. Jordan Hudson on all future emails. Like she's not employed by the University of North Carolina. She isn't. And I'm wondering, like, it makes me wonder. This is an older guy. What's happening? Is she taking advantage of someone? Like what? Like
elder abuse.
Well, I mean, listen, I don't know. I mean, he seems pretty with it.
We shouldn't have done this.
He seems with it. Honestly, though, Jim, like what? This is a man who has never ceded control to anyone.
Now, that is a very fine point.
He's never ceded control to anyone. He's never allowed someone to have so much influence on what he's doing. I'm not kidding, Jim. Like, you're laughing at me, but I'm like, is something wrong with Bill Belichick?
Well, it's possible. Like,
if I was his daughter, I would be like, power of attorney. I'm taking over everything.
Now, let me tell you.
Can we see the pictures one more time?
Yeah, let's keep the pictures up for the whole show. So here is... because our staff
weird.
Okay, fine. So
also, but you know what? He is like 73.
Yeah,
that's
great
impressive.
Leg strength and like core strength. Like good for you. Yeah. I guess. I mean, sand is it's
not
unsteady.
Yeah. I can barely walk on the beach. Okay, now our staff decided they're really going to research this. This is amazing. I think it's an exclusive.
Okay.
Our staff learned that Belichick first encountered Jordan Hudson after seeing a video of her talking about him online. We actually have the sound from that video in an exclusive. Here it is.
How much do you love the Patriots?
So much, I want to awesome.
Who's the other guy that you still want to meet on the Patriots? He's not a player.
Belichick.
How much do you want to meet him?
So much.
That is beautiful.
So sweet.
That is so moving.
Sweet.
And dreams
That
came
is
true.
so-
Dreams came true.
Yeah,
Wow.
so adorable.
It's really-
I think it's weird. I'm not going to be nice about it. I think it's weird. I think it's suspicious. I think that there's something weird going on. I don't know what it is, but something weird is going on.
Okay. We're talking to I tend to agree with you. We're talking to Trenni Casey here. So Wayne Gretzky, arguably the greatest hockey player ever.
Yeah.
Wayne Gretzky, while he's lived in the U.S. for a couple of decades, obviously one of the proudest
Canadians.
Productions, if you want to call it that, of Canada, is now not so well loved by his fellow Canadians. What happened?
Yeah,
there?
so Canadians are upset because he has a very close relationship with Donald Trump. To kind of put this in perspective, his daughter, Paulina Gretzky, is married to, who's the golfer? But he's whoever the golfer. Dustin Johnson. Dustin Johnson. She's married to Dustin Johnson. Dustin Johnson is close to Donald Trump. He is very much a Trump guy. And Wayne Gretzky has become a Trump guy as well. Wayne Gretzky, by the way, is a citizen of the United States. He married he married an American woman.
Yep.
And Canadians are upset that recently Donald Trump has, instituted these high tariffs on Canada. And I think more distressingly to Canadians and to some Americans, he has called Canada the 51st state and talked about annexing it and talking about how it would be better if it was part of the United States. And they're upset that Wayne Gretzky is not speaking out against this and saying, like, listen, hey, this guy might be my friend, but this is ridiculous. Canada's an independent nation. It's my home. Instead, he continually stays silent to the point where when Wayne Gretzky was in Boston for the Four Nations, which took place, a couple of weeks ago, it was the hockey's, instead of an all-star game this year, they did this Four Nations, USA, Canada, Finland, Sweden, and USA, Canada played in the final. Wayne Gretzky was like an honorary captain for Team Canada. So some are saying he was booed. Or at the very least, it wasn't like a warm reception from either side. Some are saying, it was mostly an American crowd, but there was a number of Canadians there, and Canadians are upset that their favored son is not standing up for his home nation.
By the way, he has been a Trump supporter, been seen in a MAGA hat. He was at the inauguration. There didn't seem to be a lot of upset about that. The final straw was these tariffs, and the 51st state thing, as you say, and his silence. By the way, we have a photograph, which I don't think anybody else has, of Donald Trump on the beach holding Wayne Gretzky up as he shoots the puck. It's really a lovely...
He's got him up with his foot. It's sort of like the Bobby Orr statue a little bit, I'm just kidding.
But, by the way, his wife is... I don't know if she did this on Instagram. Yeah. Said he's totally destroyed by the reaction of Canadian people.
I understand it from both sides. I'm sure that he still loves his country, but I'm sure that there are Canadians who are saying we feel under attack, and you are choosing your second home as opposed to your first home to defend.
This,
essentially,
in this piece from the New York Times, it says in 2009, Gretzky was awarded the nation's highest civilian honor, Companion of the Order of Canada, recognizing outstanding achievement, dedication to community, and service to the nation, their highest award. But to date, he's not even gone
to accept it.
To accept the award, which is kind of odd too. So obviously they thought the world of him, and that was a long time ago. And I get why.
Maybe again, I don't know Wayne Gretzky. I don't know anything about him. Sometimes maybe he's just someone who doesn't like to be in the spotlight. And I know that sounds crazy because the whole reason he has his fortune is because he was in the spotlight. But maybe he doesn't like to insert. Maybe he doesn't feel worthy of that, and so he feels uncomfortable accepting an award like that. I mean, who knows? There's always a lot of reasons why people act the way that they do. But I think that we're in a time where silence sometimes speaks louder than your words. And when you're not standing up for your country, which is feeling attacked. I can understand why citizens of Canada are frustrated by that.
One of the interesting things here, Donald Trump, I think it is fair to say, even if you're a Trump supporter, has no concern for the feelings of any other human being except himself. Well, he actually did a nice thing here in a weird way when his buddy Gretzky was under attack. he put something on Truth Social.
Yeah, I
saying
read that
it's
in this.
fine if Wayne Gretzky shows his loyalty to his country, even though we believe our deal is. I mean, it was almost.
But then he
said
something like, "It would be better if it was
we were
part
still
of
annexed,
if we annexed them."
So wasn't that nice?
I will say to that point, and I'm glad that you said that because it it triggered something that I thought when I read the article. When his wife was like, "Oh, this is really hurting his feelings. He doesn't like, being talked poorly about or being attacked," and I was like. Interesting coming, like that's rich coming from someone who supports a person who does nothing but attacks and makes people feel bad. And that is something I think that base it revels in. I think they love to see when someone they don't like is verbally attacked over and over again publicly and knocked down a peg in their eyes. And now you're like, oh, this is hurting our feelings. Well, maybe tell the other guy to stop hurting everybody's feelings all the time.
So March Madness starts today. That's the NCAA basketball championship. I have to say, my whole life, I've been into this in a huge way.
And now you're not?
And I know one player on the men's side, Cooper Flagg from Duke and Maine. I know one player on the women's side, Paige Beckers from University. One player in the men's, one in the women's. And then I read Shaughnessy's column this morning, who basically says, I used to love this too, says Dan. I've had it. And his position is they're all professionals. It's not even, one player, and I forget what team, on the St. John's. One player on St. John's has played for 4 colleges, and it's either his 5th or 6th year playing in college. And he says, it's a business, it's professional, it's not even college athletics anymore.
So, I'm more into it than you are because I went to Marquette, and Marquette doesn't have like a bunch of, their 4 seniors have been together 4 years.
Oh,
in fact,
great.
their 2 best seniors, Stevie Mitchell and Cam Jones, were part of Shaka Smart's initial recruiting class, and they've been with him the whole way. But I understand it. It's like it's not like how it used to be. It's like you follow your team and your players. Like if a kid doesn't play a lot, he's like, you know what? Peace out. I'm going to another team. And it happens with women's basketball as well. And I cannot for the life of me remember. I can picture her in my head. She played actually for Team USA in the 3-on-3 tournament this year in the Olympics. I think she played at LSU last year, and prior to that, she played for the Baylor women's team. And I can't remember her name right now. Maybe somebody can quickly look it up. She's got blonde hair. She's moved around because it's like every team she goes to, she doesn't she doesn't get enough playing time. She doesn't feel like she's getting enough NIL money. So it's hard. There's no loyalty to anyone, so it's hard to be loyal to a player. On the men's side, women's players often stay 4 years, but on the men's side, if you're good, if you're Cooper Flagg,
1 year.
You're a one and done. It's almost like I would prefer them to say, make a rule. In football, you cannot leave for the NFL until after your junior season. That's in large part because of the physical nature of football, and they don't want kids that are too young going into the NFL.
Yep.
I would love to see them make some sort of rule where, either you can go straight to the pros, you can take the chance and go to the pros right out of high school, But if you stay in college, you have to stay for 3 years. But the problem is, even if you stay for 3 years or whatever, or 2 years in college, if you're not having a good freshman season and you're riding the bench, then you just go to another school. You just enter the transfer portal and you move around. It doesn't have the same, I definitely do find myself now enjoying the first the first weekend of college basketball is great because you get some of those upsets. You might get a High Point University that gets in and maybe they upset someone. You might get a low seed that knocks out a high seed. But once it's just the higher seeds and sort of the blue blood programs, I don't know, it's not that exciting anymore.
So why do they do this?
So part of it is, and I understand it, part of the issue used to be, Marjorie, that coaches had no parameters about. So if we'll use Marquette's now head coach as an example, Shaka Smart, he coached it was Virginia Commonwealth or something was one of his early jobs. And then they make this run to the Sweet 16. Boom, he pieces out and he goes, I forget where he went. Then he went to a bigger school and then he went to Texas and then he didn't succeed at Texas. So he came to Marquette. kind of found like a happy medium in the middle. So these coaches were able to jump and go wherever the best money and the best job was.
Okay.
And then you'd recruit these kids who come in, and then these kids fall in love with the coach, and then they have to stay. They can't leave, but the coach can. So I think in their mind, having a transfer portal allowed kids to maybe follow the coach
Why
that they
not
wanted
have
to.
a 2 or 3 year contract for the coach?
Well, they do, but you can always buy some. It's like Bill Belichick's contract at the University of North Carolina.
Okay.
He has a couple of years on his deal, but after a certain point, he can buy himself up for $1 million. Like $1 million to Bill Belichick's probably like $1,000 to the rest of us.
Well,
You know,
the
it's
two
not
other
that
reasons,
much.
by the way, the courts have gotten involved in a lot of this stuff.
Yeah.
And number two, some of these athletes at the bigger schools are making millions for the schools.
I mean, I don't even
and
know.
struggling to
I
pay
get
for
that.
their meals.
I get
So
that part. But it just seems
it's
like
out
you
of
maybe
control.
do it a different way than this. I don't know enough about it, though, so I'm going to shut
I know,
up.
but I agree. It takes away, there used to be something about, and listen, I still like it. I still love the first four, or the play-in tournament starts tonight, and then you've got Thursday, and you've got basketball all day Thursday, all day Friday. It's really fun, and you'll do your bracket, and I'm always like all into my bracket the first couple of days, and then I'm like, okay, I don't really know. Now it's just Kentucky and North Carolina, or no, North Carolina's actually not that good this year, but like Duke, Auburn,
You know what they said? There was a study
Tennessee.
that came out. We see this study every March Madness. The United States loses $17 billion in productivity for people watching the games
March
while they're
Madness.
work on their computers.
One last quick thing. I was reading this Globe magazine story about this kid from Brockton who's supposedly like he's 6'9". He's a high school kid. He's supposedly like the biggest
I didn't read
star.
this.
That was a
Yeah,
great
and
story,
I just thought, what does he do? Does he go? Now he went from Brockton. He's in some prep school now.
That happens a lot too. Yeah,
but does he go straight to the NBA?
You can't. You have to. I think. Wait, maybe you. I should know this off the top of my head. I think you can't anymore. I think you at least have to do one year in the NCAA, which is why like Jason Tatum played at Duke for a year.
You can
Cooper
also
Flagg
see
plays
where
at Duke for a year.
You could get hurt.
Oh yeah.
So you think about that too. I can understand why you might not want to
Yeah,
wait.
you can also be a poor kid and tomorrow morning make $100 million.
And that's what I was going to say, because there has
exactly.
And I don't know the
or you can get hurt
socioeconomics
and make nothing.
I don't know the socioeconomics of Cooper Flagg.
Oh, if you don't sign.
Yes.
But Cooper Flagg has talked about maybe coming back next year. And I wonder if that's a product of him coming from a socioeconomic background that allows him to, if I don't make millions and millions of dollars, it's okay.
Yeah.
I was raised where it's like a Jason Tatum, raised by a single mom, raised in a poor part of St. Louis. Like Jason Tatum was probably chomping at the bit just to get in, make money, and like pull his mom maybe out of a situation that she didn't want to be in, or a jail. I think socioeconomically, kids who come from more stable families and a better economic position have the luxury of staying in college longer and enjoying that experience versus a kid who feels like if I don't jump to the NBA and make millions of dollars, my mom can't put food on the table.
So we only have a couple minutes left. Marjorie mentioned John Feinstein, legendary writer, both at the Washington Post, written 1 million books, died at 69. The reason we bring it up, it seems to me, I read Season on the Brink when it came out about Bobby Knight, and for those of you too young, coach of Indiana, who was both a fabulous coach and totally abusive.
Total hothead.
And a total a-hole. He, sort of in the tradition of a book written even before in baseball called Ball 4 by a pitcher for the Yankees, Jim Bouton, which
book.
really for the first time ever in college basketball, in Major League Baseball, gave the grittier underbelly.
I was going to say, expose the
of
underbelly.
The sports.
Yeah.
And I read, when Feinstein died, just to see if it still works, I read one chapter online of A Season on the Brink, which is like 40 or 30 years old. It's fabulous.
Yeah.
And so, I mean, what does he mean to people like you in the industry?
I mean, he was, and I'm lucky enough to have, back in the day, he did some things when we still had, when NBC Sports had a regional base in D.C. I knew him a little bit. I met him a couple times. I did a number of interviews with him. He just was like for such a star in the industry and someone who had such gravitas and he also wrote A Long Walk Spoiled. So he was big in golf.
I remember that. That was a famous book.
He wrote a lot of golf books, wrote a lot of college basketball books, but he just was a tremendous columnist for the Washington Post, always measured. People just open. There was something about him that when he talked to you, even through a screen, he'd be in D.C. and I would be in Boston. There was something about him that he made you comfortable immediately.
Really
he was really down to earth. When I saw this news, it was everybody in our newsroom collectively gasped when it kind of came across the wire that he had passed away, and far, far too young, and suddenly at 69. He was a tremendous columnist. He wasn't afraid to take a stance either. I think now, I don't want to say it's about all columnists, but I think people are so worried about offending someone or maybe not gaining access anymore because they're critical.
Well, who's an exception in this town?
Dan Shaughnessy.
Dan Shaughnessy does it just right. He'll go into the clubhouse the next day with the players, and you don't see that a lot.
And that's how John Feinstein was. Yeah.
I want to mention the guy's name from Brockton, A.J. DeBonsta, D-Y-B-A-N-S-T-A. He's from Brockton, and he's 18 years old. He's already worked out with LeBron James and been a guest of NBA Commissioner Adam Silver. He's now at Utah Prep Academy.
Speaking of names, one of our colleagues says Haley Van Lith. Is that who you're talking about?
That's what I'm talking about, Haley Van Lith.
That was the woman who was been
bouncing around.
So do you complete a bracket for the thing?
Yeah, why not? It's fun. I've got one friend who does it. He charges like $25 or $30, and part of it you can win, but part of it goes to a childhood cancer foundation. So a lot of people do it like half for charity, half in, half out.
Speaking
but I
of
would
charity,
never just gamble.
You did a wonderful thing for your MS run this weekend.
I did. Yes. I did, Mark. But thank you for donating. Thank you for coming.
We
did. We raised $27,500.
Congratulations. That's really fabulous.
Yeah, and we're going to keep hearing about that run, too, as it moves along.
We'll talk about it, because I'll be limping in here.
That's right.
Trenni Casey.
Speaking with Trenni Casey, anchor reporter for NBC Sports Boston.
Boston Public Radio with Jim Browdy and Marjorie Egan. Just ahead, more smart conversation about what's going on in our community. That's right after an NPR news break, here on GBH News 89.7.
Funding for our programs comes from you.
And Comcast Business, committed to providing connectivity for your business with network and cybersecurity solutions. Comcast Business, powering possibilities. Restrictions apply. To learn more, you can call or visit ComcastBusiness.com. Fasten your seatbelts. American Experience delves into the incredible story of the flight attendants who fought for equal rights and fair pay, changing the world while they flew around it. Watch Fly With Me, tonight at 9 on GBH2.
You're listening to 89.7 WGBH HD1 Boston. Online at gbhnews.org. GBH News. What matters to you?
I'm Jim Browdy, ahead on Hour 2 of Boston Public Radio, live from the Boston Public Library. Last time he was on, Marty Baron's Zoom connection froze, coincidentally, right after Marjorie asked him a question about Jeff Bezos' girlfriend. We'll give it another shot at noon with former Globe and Washington Post editor and Pulitzer Prize winner Marty Baron on the latest media headlines in this fraught moment in the news industry, including yet more editorial censorship at his old paper.
I'm Marjorie Egan. Then we're celebrating Women's History Month with two of the people behind the Massachusetts Women's History Center. They're launching the Hall of Fame for notable women from the Commonwealth and taking nominations. Unfortunately, a new Trump executive order says that Hall of Fame must be made up exclusively of old white men. Just kidding, kinda. And all our Two More Things segment is next on Boston Public Radio, 89.7 GBH, live from the Boston Public Library.
Live from NPR News in Washington, I'm Lakshmi Singh. Gaza's health ministry is reporting more than 400 deaths and hundreds more people injured since Israel launched aerial attacks overnight and shattered a 2-month-old ceasefire with Hamas. The Associated Press capturing images of people of all ages being rushed into a medical facility in Khan Yunis. Israel says it's still striking terrorist targets belonging to Hamas and Palestinian Islamic Jihad terrorist organizations across the Gaza Strip. NPR's Hadil Al-Shalchi reports on whether the latest assault means the ceasefire is over.
It might be a little too early to tell if the war is fully back on or what these strikes mean exactly for the ceasefire. You know, in recent weeks, Israel has been steadily increasing strikes in Gaza. Hamas hasn't yet responded with its own strikes. But today's assault is, of course, a pressure tactic by Israel to get Hamas to accept that extension. And they're a huge step back.
NPR's Hadil Al-Shalchi reporting. A potential ceasefire between Russia and Ukraine is at the center of talks this hour between President Trump and Russian President Vladimir Putin. The Department of Justice must comply today with a court ruling ordering it to provide details on a series of deportation flights carrying alleged members of Tren de Aragua, a U.S.-designated foreign terror organization. A federal judge said the DOJ ignored multiple rulings to turn around the flights. Here's NPR's Sergio Martinez Beltran.
Federal Judge James Boasberg issued oral and written rulings on Saturday, ordering the Trump administration to stop using the Alien Enemies Act to remove people to El Salvador. But the DOJ suggested in a hearing Monday that a verbal ruling was not strong enough to stop them from flying more than 260 people to the Central American country. The Justice Department claims it did not fly additional migrants once Boasberg issued a written order. Boasberg ordered the DOJ to provide a sworn declaration that no one on any flight departing Saturday evening was removed under the Alien Enemies Act, a rarely used wartime law. The judge is also asking for flight details, and DOJ's estimates of how many people it views as subject to the Alien Enemies Act remain in the U.S. and in custody. Sergio Martinez Beltran, NPR News.
The Federal Reserve's policymakers are meeting over the next 2 days. The gathering underway is being held against the backdrop of the Trump administration's sweeping cuts across the federal government, as well as tariffs due to take effect next month. The uncertainty raising fears of a recession this year, which has roiled U.S. markets. At last check on Wall Street, we see the Dow is down 354 points, or more than 0.5%. At 41,487. The S&P is now down more than 1%. The Nasdaq is down 1.6%. This is NPR News.
Good afternoon. From the GBH Radio Newsroom in Boston, I'm Henry Santoro. Massachusetts Congressman Jake Auchincloss says being the minority party is making it hard for Democrats to make their case that President Trump is moving the country in the wrong direction. Appearing on Fox News, Auchincloss said that there's great unease in the country over the chaos that Trump has caused in Washington. He says there's widespread concern that Trump is pushing the country into recession.
Nonpartisan experts are pointing out that his tariffs are going to raise costs on Americans by $2,000 every year. That's food, that's home and car insurance, that's clothing. This is a very expensive reality show out of Washington, D.C. right now for the average American.
Auchincloss says Democrats lack unity right now as they recover from the November election, and that's made it hard to coalesce around a message. Still, he says, internal debate is good for a party in need of new leaders and new ideas. Well, 2 months into 2025, and the market for single-family homes in Massachusetts is up a bit compared to the same time last year. The State House News Service and the Warren Group say that there were 2,136 single-family homes sold in the Commonwealth last month. That's a 4.2% increase over February 2024. The median single-family sale price climbed nearly 5% year over year to hit $575,000 this February. In sports, Celtics host the Nets at the Garden tonight. Exhibition baseball, Red Sox play the Yankees this afternoon. Professional women's hockey, it's the Fleet hosting Montreal. 46 degrees in Boston. This is GBH News.
Support for NPR comes from NPR stations. Other contributors include Progressive, with small business insurance for protecting a variety of business types with multiple coverage options, designed to fit business owners' needs. More about small business insurance is at progressivecommercial.com.
He is Jim Browdy. I am Marjorie Egan. Welcome to hour number 2 of Boston Public Radio, 89.7 GBH. We are broadcasting live from the Boston Public Library. Thank you, and streaming at youtube.com/GBH News. Hello again, Jim.
Hey, Marjorie, before I introduce our next guest, we're getting a lot of texts from people asking about this Putin-Trump call. According to the White House, it is underway. It is, quote, going well, says the White House, whatever that means. John King from CNN will join us at 1 o'clock, and that's among the things we will talk to him about. Last time our next guest, Marty Baron, was on with us, his Zoom connection froze. Coincidentally, right after Marjorie asked him a question about his former boss, Jeff Bezos, his girlfriend. So we're going to give it another shot, though I think we are going to skip the girlfriend. We're joined now by former Globe and Washington Post editor and Pulitzer Prize winning editor Marty Baron. Marty, good to see you again. Welcome back.
Yeah, good to be back. Sorry about all that.
Oh, it's perfectly
well,
okay.
I mean, Jim may have preempted you, Marty, unless there was something you'd like to add about the girlfriend and the brassiere at the inaugural. No.
That truly was a coincidence, but I do not have anything to add on that.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Just checking. So last time we talked with you, we did talk about Jeff Bezos' edict about the editorial page of the Washington Post. It was going to be about free markets and personal liberties, and people that had other opinions could express them elsewhere. And since then, one of the longtime great columnists, Ruth Marcus, at the Washington Post, resigned after she did criticize him for that in what she herself said was kind of not exactly fire and brimstone, but kind of almost she almost said it was an embarrassing, soft backstep. But nonetheless, they wouldn't run it, and she resigned. So what are we to make of that?
Well, it's concerning. I mean, I think Ruth is a fantastic columnist. She's, I think she's the best legal affairs columnist in the country today. And she made an enormous contribution to the quality of the opinion pages of the Post and was deputy editorial page editor for a period of time as well. What's really disturbing is that the publisher wouldn't even meet with her to discuss that column. He said, well, the decision was final, so there was no point in meeting with her. Look, I think there should be internal discussions like that. And the fact that she wasn't able to criticize the Post, as she said, was a signal that something had changed at the Post. They used to allow the columnists to write essentially what they wanted, as long as they didn't cross, certain boundaries of taste and defamation and all that sort of thing. So I think it's really concerning that the opinion pages and the opinion section is dedicated solely to a philosophy that is aligned with Jeff Bezos' own philosophy. I think he's certainly entitled within the editorial page to say whatever he wants and have an editorial page editor and editorials that reflect his own views of the world. That's entirely appropriate. But then to say that the opinion pages and the opinion section online will only have essentially one point of view, I think it's a big mistake and a bad sign. It's a mistake because that section has typically honored free expression in this country by allowing for a wide range of views and allowing for civic debate and civil debate. And that's something that Jeff Bezos previously welcomed in the Post, and for some reason now he's decided that should no longer apply.
We're talking to Marty Baron. We should have mentioned his really important book, Collision of Power.
Oh, yeah, I'm sorry.
Deserves reading.
My fault.
And, it was my fault, but nevertheless. Marty Baron, when you were here a couple of times ago, I asked you about whether or not we should be worried that Bezos' thumb would be on the scale, not just on editorial pages, but in the newsroom. And you said at the time, there's no indication it's seeping into the news pages. And then you wrote in The Atlantic not too long ago, thankfully, the news department at the Washington Post continues to operate with admirable independence. But my question is, how do you really know that? And I'll tell you why I ask. As Marjorie said, in Ruth Marcus's long piece in The New Yorker after she resigned, which also includes the column that they wouldn't publish for those who haven't read it yet, she said, as Marjorie said, I shied away from mentioning that the newspaper was one of his playthings. That was in her piece that did run about the inauguration of oligarchs, meaning all the billionaires at his inauguration. And in the column that didn't run, she said, and she sounded like she was apologizing for this, there was almost no mention of his cozying up to Trump concerning free markets and things. So if it turns out that someone of the quality and integrity of Ruth Marcus is engaging in what she admits, she didn't use this term, some degree of self-censorship, why should we assume that a news reporter, as honorable as he or she or they are, wouldn't engage in the same behavior, Marty Baron?
Well, first of all, she praised the news coverage as I have. I think the coverage has been stellar and independent and rigorous and vigorous and all of that, and I applaud it enthusiastically. I think you would see it in the coverage. The coverage day to day has been aggressive. It has held Trump to account. Every day they have another revelatory story. And also, look, I have a lot of sources within that newsroom. I would know if there were interference. And by the way, as I think you can appreciate, and you certainly know, newsrooms are about the leakiest places on earth. Yeah. And if Trump if Bezos were to interfere in the news coverage, you can be sure that that news department would be screaming about it, and they would make it known to the broader public. That hasn't happened, and I'm grateful that hasn't happened. I hope it never happens. So that's where we stand today, and I think they're doing a great job day to day, and that's why I continue to support the Post and continue to subscribe.
So, but as someone who used to be the employer at a bunch of papers of young journalists new to the field, you don't worry, put the Washington Post aside, which you know intimately and know the players, you don't worry about more, I don't know, anticipatory obedience even there in some of the less powerful newspapers, or no?
Well, I mean, I don't worry about it at some point, but I haven't seen it yet. I've seen really great coverage from the Post, from the New York Times, from the Wall Street Journal, from the LA Times, where there's many of the same sorts of issues taking place there as well. I see a lot of great coverage coming out of other publications. Wired Magazine comes to mind immediately, but plenty of others as well, and including the networks. So I'm proud of that. That makes me proud of our profession. It demonstrates that the journalists in this country do intend to be independent, do intend to fulfill their mission of holding power to account, which is why we have a free and independent press in this country, why the Constitution in the form of the First Amendment provides for that. And so I just haven't seen it, certainly not from the Post, and I'm proud of the people in that newsroom for doing their jobs.
Let me beat this horse for just one more second, if I can. I know you were not in charge of the editorial department, but as you described Ruth Marcus, and as a consumer of her work, I feel the exact same way you did about all of her wonderful reporting and columns. She acknowledges that she did it. That is of concern too, is it not? She obviously did it for a reason, whether she thought it wouldn't get past the censors, meaning her bosses. Isn't that of some concern, even on the opinion side?
Well, she did it in that one instance, that one column. That she knew. In two instances?
She mentioned two. She said in her column on the, quote, the inauguration of oligarchs, I shied away from mentioning that the newspaper was one of his playthings, she said.
Yeah. Well, she didn't use that language. In any event.
No, she did. That's in the New Yorker. I'm reading verbatim.
She shied away from it, though.
She didn't use it in the column.
Correct.
Look, I mean, I look at the columns every day. There's some really tough columns there about Donald Trump. I think that's as it should be, and there should be columns that defend him. They have columnists who are in Trump's camp, and that's great. I think that's what an opinion section should be, is a wide variety of opinions, and let everybody speak up, and let's honor free expression in this country, particularly at a newspaper that presents itself as a defender of democracy. And at the heart of our democratic values is free expression. It's the most fundamental personal liberty that we have in this country. So I haven't seen that from other columns. She may have decided that she, particularly in this latest column, the one that she tried to get in at the end, that she would go easy just to see if she could get it in that way, but she couldn't even get the thing published by toning it down. So that's unfortunate. Apparently Eric Wemple, the media columnist there, wrote a previous column, and he didn't get it in at all, and I gather he didn't tone it down either.
We're talking with Marty Baron, used to be the editor of the Boston Globe and the Washington Post. We talk a lot about people losing trust in the media, and it drives me crazy as somebody who spent most of my life in newspapers that, if you make a mistake in the newspaper, you're going to run a correction, or you can get sued if you screw up. And now that's all out the window, not in newspapers, but it seems to be everywhere else. And one of the things that drives me crazy about lack of trust in the media is that so many people that are young now, they're getting their news online, they're getting their news from, YouTube or TikTok or whatever it is. But the right-wing swing of this is really dramatic. This story from Media Matters talks about how you look at YouTube, Rumble, Twitch, Kick, Spotify, Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, right-leaning online shows account for 82% of the total following of the online shows we assess. And if you look at listen to a guy like Joe Rogan, I mean, he's a very entertaining and talented guy, but when people say false things or lies on his show, usually either he doesn't know to correct them or he doesn't want to correct them or whatever, and he's one of the biggest podcasters in America. So that's a long way of asking, what do we do going forward? Because there's obviously this responsible end that can't run errors, and then
which the people don't trust either, by the way.
Right. Well, I hope they trust the newspapers more. Maybe they don't. But this online stuff where you can say whatever you want, and you can lie all day long.
Yeah, look, I mean, the matter of trust is a really big issue in media. I think there are, at least from the standpoint of traditional media, there are several things that we need to do, and I'm not suggesting that they address this really difficult issue completely, but I think they would be steps forward. Number one is that we have to cover our entire community, our entire country, all people, not have contempt for anybody, reflect their concerns, their struggles, their aspirations, their expectations. Look, there are a lot of people in this country who are struggling. And by the way, most of their lives have nothing to do with politics. We just need to reflect what they're going through and what they hope for in a very fair and complete and thorough way. Number two is that I think we need to be a lot more transparent about how we go about our work. We can't just tell a story, we have to show it as well. Let's show all the work that went into a story. Let's show people the court document that we relied upon, the entire court document. We can annotate the portion that we referred to, but show them the whole court document so that people can see whether or not we took something out of context. And the same applies to a video and an audio or a data set. Take people to the data set, show people the entire audio, show them the entire video. They can see whether we've taken anything out of context. And the message ought to be, check our work. You have the right, and we're giving you the opportunity to check our work. And the third thing that I would mention, and this sort of gets at the points that you were making, Marjorie, and that is that, look, we all work for communications companies of one sort or another, but the traditional communications companies are failing to communicate successfully, given the radical changes that are taking place in the way that people consume information. So the reality is that influencers, podcasters, and others are connecting with people more effectively than traditional media. And so what should our answer to that be? Should we just look with disdain on them, or should we learn from them? And I would suggest that we should learn from them in terms of what is it that they are doing that is succeeding, because they are communicating with authenticity, and by communicating authenticity, they also seem to be communicating authority, whether they have that authority or they don't have that authority. Some do, and a lot don't. We in traditional media, we focus on the authority part. We do all the reporting, we check the facts. Not that we're perfect, we get things wrong, but we really work at it. But we're not communicating with authenticity. And when we don't communicate with authenticity, then people don't give us credit for the authority.
What do you mean, authenticity?
They seem like somebody you can connect with, somebody is somebody that you would trust, like a friend or a family member.
Okay.
Or things like that, as opposed to being a representative of a big institution. And people are distrusting of institutions these days. So somehow there's a manner of communication that they are engaging in that is working, and we're not doing it, and we're not doing it well.
Okay, so I get that part, and like I said before, a lot of these podcasters, the bro podcasters, I listened to a lot of bros before the election, to find out what everybody was thinking on these, and they are very talented, very smart, very entertaining, very authentic. You have a sense of them, like radio, it's a very intimate medium. I think the podcast, in a way, you think you get to know the person that's doing it. But the problem is, you can say things that aren't true. I mean, every time I mention the fairness doctrine, which Reagan got rid of, everybody says, that's ridiculous, you can't do that now, you know, the internet has changed everything, you can't go back. And the fairness doctrine, by the way, was basically if someone said the sky is green, then the next person would come on and say the sky was red, and there would be both sides of every kind of issue. That's the simplification. But you know what I mean? So people had an idea what was accurate, and I guess that's my problem. The accuracy is gone.
Sure. Well, I can't stop them. We can't stop them from saying things that are simply untrue, that are misleading, that are total distortions. That's not going to be possible. What we need to do is be able to communicate facts, reality, proper context, truth in a more effective way, and offer that as an alternative.
But why is it impossible? Why can't people be sued in the same way that newspapers get sued?
Well, a podcaster can be sued, and an influencer could be sued. So they could be sued, and maybe they will be sued. In fact, look, Fox News had to pay a $787 million settlement with voting systems, and there was just another settlement of that sort as well, and with one of the right-wing networks. And so they do get sued, and they are accountable for that. The area that's immune from this form of litigation is sort of online commentary and things like that, a tweet that you put out or what have you. And the platforms are immune from litigation. The person who puts it out is not immune from litigation. So they can be sued. They have been sued. They have paid a high price, and yet people still believe them. So it's important that we be able to communicate effectively with facts, with truth, but in a way that actually works in the new media environment. That's the best that we can do. And look, keep in mind. By the way, there's a great documentary out called "Becoming Catherine Graham" about a publisher, and I recommend it to everybody. And there are a lot of lessons there. And people forget that the Washington Post, day after day after day, was publishing stories about the Nixon administration, and it wasn't resonating with the American public. In fact, a lot of other media were not following what the Washington Post was doing, and not even publishing their stories, by the way, that went out over their wire. And then Nixon got reelected in a landslide. Despite what the Washington Post was doing. You could have said, well, at the time, why is what the media is reporting not working? But in fact, ultimately, it did work. And the reason it worked, by the way, had to do with politics, not so much with media. And that was you had a Congress at the time that was willing to conduct a real investigation. And they did. And Congress voted to conduct that investigation. They did it thoroughly. They did it aggressively. And in the process of that investigation and those hearings, they discovered that there were White House tapes, and those tapes made an enormous amount of difference. So there was a time in the 70s, of course, that the media was doing its job. The Washington Post was, at least. And people weren't paying attention to it, or they were dismissive of it, or they bought into Richard Nixon's line that this was merely political activism on the part of the Post in an effort to bring Nixon down, when in fact it was just fulfilling their mission to tell the public about what was happening in their government.
We're talking to Marty Baron. And Marjorie said a minute ago, and I don't agree with her, that how authentic those podcasters on the right seem. It reminds me of one of my favorite quotes from George Burns, who once said, "The key to success is authenticity. If you can learn how to fake that, you've got it made," which is, I think, at least my view of that. Having said that, you made a movie recommendation. Can I make one, too, relating to your second point about how to restore trust, show what kind of work goes into the reporting that people do? You've seen the movie Spotlight. You've seen the movie Spotlight?
Yeah, as a matter of fact, I did more than once, amazingly enough.
Actually, Marty's character, as I hope most people know, is at the center of the story about the Globe's brilliant reporting on the horror in the Catholic Church. I think that movie did a better job of, to me at least, in a popular form, of showing what goes into real and important reporting by journalists than anything I have ever seen. Would you sign on to that?
Well, I think it did a great job of showing how one conducts investigative reporting and why investigative reporting is so important and how it's central to our mission. So I was very grateful for that movie and what it contributed to our profession. and what it communicated to the general public about why we need journalism and why we need investigative reporting. And by the way, communicated to journalists themselves why we need to listen to people without power, because they often have very powerful things to say.
By the way, Zoe, our colleague, just wrote about that movie, Spotlight. The movie was the first time I watched a journalism movie where a female journalist wasn't insinuated to have slept with her sources. You know, Marty Baron, before
Let's not forget All the President's Men back in the 70s.
Well,
that was
good.
an oldie, but that was a great movie.
I can tell you that Sasha Pfeiffer, who was the female reporter in there, she made sure that it did not go in the direction.
Yeah.
And the screenwriters, the director and his co-screenwriter, were determined to make sure that it did not come in that.
Sasha Pfeiffer, who went from the Globe to NPR, for whatever it's worth.
Yeah,
By the way,
reporter.
last thing from me is Donald Trump is hell-bent on eliminating the Voice of America. And as I think people know, the parent thing, he's nominated Carrie Lake, who's the election-denying former candidate twice out of Arizona. How big a deal is, assuming he's successful, which he appears to be on his way to, how big a deal is that, Marty Baron?
Well, it appears he's already been successful at that. It looks like it's basically been disbanded and dismantled. We'll see if they put something in its place. I think it's a big deal because I think it demonstrated to the entire world that even the U.S. government would support independent, fact-based journalism rather than just disseminating propaganda. That was important. And on top of that, it did a lot of reporting around the world that was not being done by other media organizations, and was in fact reporting on Iran, reporting on China, reporting on authoritarian regimes around the world in a way that they certainly did not appreciate, and that disturbed them greatly. And it was the only reporting of that sort that was available to their own citizens that they could get access to. So not to have that is a gift to authoritarians around the world.
You know, Marty Baron, one more question from me. You mentioned how when the Post was doing all the great reporting about Nixon and the enemies list and all that kind of stuff, that it didn't seem to be making a huge impact in the country, and then he was reelected. I'm not asking you to, well, maybe I am asking you to predict. It seems that way to me a lot right now, that story after story is coming out about Doge or about the Voice of America or about the president's apparent idea that he doesn't have to listen to judges, all these kinds of things, and it's not really resonating with people either. And is this because, what do you make of that? It's kind of the same thing as happened with Watergate.
Look, I mean, I think we live in an era of instant gratification, and people want to see immediate results from the reporting that takes place, but that's just not the way that it worked. It works. It's not the way that it worked back at the time of Watergate, and it's certainly not the way it works today. I do think that it's certainly seeping through to the general public. You've seen an erosion of support for Trump, not a collapse by any means, but an erosion of support, and largely because people are concerned about what Doge is doing and the way that it's doing it, not the concept of finding efficiencies in government, which obviously everybody should favor, and nobody doubts that there is bureaucracy and inefficiency and all of that. Actually, I see, a lot of that exists in private enterprise too, by the way.
Yep.
But the way that it's going about, the inhumane nature of it, all of that, and then many of the other measures that Trump has taken, making enemies with our friends and trying to make friends with our traditional enemies. Who knew that? I don't think that the public expected that we were going to be in a huge conflict with Canada, of all places, one of the friendliest places on earth. So I do think that is seeping through, and we're seeing that people are expressing discontent with Elon Musk. His approval ratings have dropped substantially. Approval for Trump has dropped substantially. I think, though, what's going to likely to have the greatest impact is people's own individual economic circumstances. Are they better off or are they worse off? And there's a lot of concern about ongoing inflation. There's a lot of concern about that we may be on the edge of a recession. That is likely to have a big impact. So, look, I mean, even people complained about reporting not having any impact before the election in 2020, but, or during the previous Trump administration. But the reality is that in 2018, the Republicans lost the House, and Trump lost the presidency, no matter what he says about that. And then the Republicans lost the Senate because of a special Senate election in Georgia, it was really a referendum on Donald Trump. And so, people made their judgments based on what they knew about his policies and his personality, and they decided they didn't want him in the White House any longer. Of course, he's back, and but I think the press just needs to keep doing its job, doing it right, doing it objectively, doing it energetically, telling the public what it needs and deserves to know about their government. And it may take longer than you would like or I would like or whatever for this reporting to sink in. But if the reporting is validated over time, which I'm confident it will be and has been, then it'll have an impact. And I think we need some degree of patience in our society and in our profession.
I said last thing, but since you and Marjorie just had this conversation, this is the last thing because it's relevant to what you and Marjorie are talking about. I don't know if either of you saw Ezra Klein's piece in the Times today, where he's interviewing David Shore, who is a data scientist at Blue Rose Research, whatever that is. And one of the things he says in the middle, which, as I say, is relevant, I think, to this recent conversation, the story of this election is that people who follow the news closely get their information from traditional media and see politics as an important part of their identity, became more democratic in absolute terms. Meanwhile, those who don't follow politics closely and read the mainstream media became much more Republican. I assume your answer, Marty Baron, to cure that issue of spread of what the media has to say is the same 3 points you talked about in terms of trust?
Yeah, it is the same thing. And I think that I had not read that piece by Ezra, who's a former colleague of mine at the Post.
Yep.
Who's terrific. Look, the reality is that, we in the media, we sort of assume that everybody's reading us, but that's not true. Or listening to us or viewing us or whatever it might be. The reality is that I was seeing a survey that about a third of Americans don't even get what they consider to be news from any media outlet, not even social media. So they just get it from friends and family, sort of across the transom. They wouldn't even be able to identify where they hear things. And so it's kind of, within their particular tribe, that's what they're hearing and maybe what they feel comfortable with. And then, maybe another third, these are inexact numbers, of course, maybe another third are getting it from social media. It could be any kind of social media. And another third are getting it from traditional media. But even for the traditional media, a place like the New York Times, about low single digits of the percentage of their readers who consider themselves to be conservative is in the low single digits. And that is the same for the Washington Post. Essentially, when I was there, it was in the single digits, not as low as the New York Times, but low. And so they're not getting their information from the New York Times and the Washington Post and the major networks. Mostly people who are on the right are getting it from Fox News, and then everything else comes after that. Fox News is by far the dominant factor, and what Fox does gets circulated on social media and in those conversations that people have with friends and family. So it's a complicated environment. I think it's just important that we and what I would consider the fact-based press should continue to do our jobs, but try to figure out how do we earn more trust. The reality is, if we can get another 5% of people to sort of just base their opinion, people are going to disagree about policies, and that's totally fine. That is democracy. But basically, if people can sort of rely on facts in shaping their own opinions, if we get another 5% of people who just look at facts and accept actual verified facts, that will make a huge difference in our public policy discourse. It'll make a big difference in our politics. And if we get another 5% on top of that, that will be a great victory, because at any one time in this country, something like 25 to 35% of the voting public, believes in crazy conspiracy theories. 9/11 was, it wasn't committed by the people who actually committed it. It was a government conspiracy, a Jewish conspiracy, whatever. The Holocaust was fabricated or invented, they believe, or we never landed a man on the moon, or something like that. or, by the way, that the 2020 election was fraudulent. That's what they believe. And you're looking at about, like for the 2020 election, about 35% of the American public, 75% of Republicans in this country, or 70% of Republicans in this country, and that's about 35% of the voting public. So, look, I mean, let's work on getting another 5% who accept objective reality, verified facts. I will be very happy if we can accomplish that, and that is I firmly believe that is an achievable goal.
Marty Baron, it's wonderful to talk to you as always. Thanks for your time.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
We have been speaking with Pulitzer Prize-winning journalist, former editor of the Boston Globe and Washington Post, Marty Baron, and the great book he wrote about his time at the Post and other things, Collision of Power, Trump, Bezos, and the Washington Post. Thank you, Marty Baron, for being with us. Coming up after a quick break, did you know that we had a Massachusetts Women History Center right here? I did not. We're going to find out all about it with the women behind the center and talk about women's rights and history in the new era of Donald Trump. You're listening to Boston Public Radio 89.7 GBH, live from the Boston Public Library and streaming at youtube.com/GBH News.
Tomorrow night, Mayor Michelle Wu will address Boston in her third annual State of the City, and GBH News has your live coverage and analysis. With City Hall reporter Soraya Wintersmith on the ground and politics reporter Adam Riley in the studio, we'll break down the key takeaways from the speech and discuss the major issues facing Boston in the year ahead. I'm Tori Bedford. Join me tomorrow night at 7 for Boston's State of the City 2025, here on GBH 89.7.
Our programs are made possible thanks to you.
And Bridgewater State University, helping create jobs for Massachusetts and working to connect industry leaders to graduates, elevating business in Boston and beyond. bridgew.edu/elevate. And the Boston Speakers Series, announcing its upcoming season at Symphony Hall for 7 evenings, featuring Dr. Anthony Fauci, Ken Burns, Outliers author Malcolm Gladwell, and freed Russian political prisoner Vladimir Kara-Murza. bostonspeakers.org.
Welcome back to Boston. Can you give a little hand with these mics, one of you guys, please? Thank you so much. Welcome back to Boston Public Radio. Marjorie Egan and Jim Browdy. We're live at the Boston Public Library, streaming at youtube.com/GBH News. March, as I hope you know, is Women's History Month till Donald Trump abolishes it. So for the next 20 minutes, we'll hone in on the achievements and struggles of women here in Massachusetts. We're joined now by Fredie Kay, founder and president of the Massachusetts Women's History Center, along with Celia Blue, president and CEO of the Mass Women of Color Coalition. The organization has an event tomorrow at the Lynn Museum and Arts Center. We'll talk about that, featuring Lieutenant Governor Kim Driscoll. For more information about all their events, go to MA, as in Mass, MAWomen'sHistory.org. Pleasure to have you both. Thanks so much for being here. Really appreciate it.
Thank you for having us.
All right. The ladies come bearing gifts.
Yeah,
what do we have?
What do we get?
Yeah, what do we get?
Okay, so the Massachusetts Women's History Center has been around since 2010, but we had a different name way back. We've recently renamed ourselves, but we have over 200 nonprofit partners. They're all online, and one of them is the Girl Scouts. And I do some work with the Girl Scouts. And one of the women who I love and adore is Carol Sapoznik, and she's on the Girl Scouts. She heads up a group, and she also happens to be the owner of an olive oil store in Brookline.
Oh, my God.
She heard that you liked
that. Is right. That is right. I went in there. It has changed my life, the olive oil store in Brookline.
Well, I want you to know, olive oil is fine. I would have preferred thin mints myself, but thank you nevertheless.
Oh, my God. This is wonderful. Thank you so much.
I'll remember that next time.
So, Freddie, starting with you, are you going to be insulted if I tell you I hadn't heard of the Mass Women's History Center?
No.
Okay. Tell us about it for the uninformed, including me. What is it?
Thank you so much. It's a nonprofit organization, 501c3, nonprofit, nonpartisan. We started as actually an earlier name, Women's Suffrage Celebration Coalition. We began in 2010 to commemorate the 90th anniversary of women getting the vote. Now, how did that happen? Martha Coakley was Attorney General. We used to practice law together. She called me, do you want to do anything for the 90th? Yes! She didn't know I had this huge interest. And we showed the movie Iron Jawed Angels.
Yes, tell us about that.
So it stars Hilary Swank and Angelica Houston. Spectacular movie, only on HBO, never made it to the big screen, which is really a shame. For a while it was streaming, now I think you have to go on HBO. Phenomenal movie about the women's suffrage movement starting in 1913 with the famous parade in Washington, D.C. Alice Paul is the main character, who so many of us had never heard of. Alice Paul, who changed the country, the history.
Her, I have heard of. So tell us, Celia, tell us about the Mass Women of Color Coalition.
Hey, good afternoon. Nice
Thank
to
you
be
for
here.
joining us.
Thank you for having me. So I am the president and CEO of the Massachusetts Women of Color Coalition. We are also a nonprofit, nonpartisan organization. We are statewide, based in Worcester, and we provide leadership training and development for women and high school girls of color. We also share information and do advocacy work to really focus on our top 3 areas, which is economic power and sustainability, health and wellness, and political and civic engagement. And we are hitting our 10th year this year, a great milestone year for us. And we have a gala weekend in Boston that I'm going to invite you all to on October 3rd and 4th at the Seaport Hotel, where we'll be celebrating our 10th year.
At the end, let's go through all the events that every organization here has, and we'll go through that.
You know, in preparation for you both coming in, we were reading about the federal agencies barring all these things, you know, any event related to Martin Luther King Day, Black History Month, Juneteenth, LGBT Pride Month, Holocaust Remembrance Day. The Women's Hall of Fame, I mean, are you worried that the Women's Hall of Fame is going to be wiped out before you get very far? Maybe it won't be noticed here in Massachusetts, or what?
And what is the Women's Hall of Fame?
Thank you. So we're the Massachusetts Women's History Center, which came off of Suffrage 100 MA after the centennial. We decided not to close because the sky was starting to fall, and decided to enlarge and go, instead of just women's suffrage history, to enlarge all of mass women's history. And then we also decided that we're a state without a statewide Hall of Fame. Other states have them, not all of them, but some, and we didn't. So we are creating the Massachusetts Women's Hall of Fame. Celia is so the Maywalk is one of our partners. We've been working together for years, and Celia kindly agreed. She's serving on our selection committee for the Mass Women's Hall of Fame.
You know, I don't know if you listen to the show. We are pretty negative here. And so you're doing positive things. We'll come back to Massachusetts where good things are happening. I mean, for the fact that we have almost all women constitutional officers after not so long ago, what Shannon O'Brien was the first woman elected on her own statewide as treasurer a long, long time ago. Well, you have what Marjorie's talking about, the attack on anybody who's not a white, straight male on the federal front. You have the elevation, I don't mean this except seriously, the elevation of sexual abusers to the highest office in the land and many offices that he has the power to nominate. How does that sort of behavior that is not only tolerated, but his numbers are pretty good, how does that trickle down, Fredie, starting with you, into the work that you try to do in a state that hopefully respects women more than the President of the United States does?
So first of all, it makes me appreciate living in the state of Massachusetts, and I'm so thankful to be here, as I'm sure Celia is as well. And the most important thing is to recognize there have been so many moments in women's history that have been horrific, and they survived. To get the vote took over 70 years.
Yeah.
Women passed away who had dedicated their lives to this, and they never saw it. I have some examples, of recovery, if you will. So it's that it's going on, it's out there, we don't like it, we're going to do our work.
Let me just say, this is not an equivalency, so don't send me angry emails. While Trump has elevated, and I use the term loosely, to an anti-woman agenda to an art form, Joe Biden said he supported the ERA. Virginia was the 38th state to ratify it. He could have ordered the archivist of the United States to publish it, in which case it'd be part of the Constitution. And if they thought it was inappropriate or unconstitutionally invalid, they could have challenged it. He didn't do it either. But back here in Massachusetts, we have made growth, even though the legislature is still, under a third women, only 2 women of color, I think, in the state Senate. What are the areas that you think Celia, I'm asking you, what are the areas where we most need more progress in a state where there has been progress made, Massachusetts?
Yeah. So that's a great question. Thank you for that. Definitely we need to see more, and this is one of the areas we're focused on in encouraging more women of color to be in elected, not only elected positions, but also appointed positions.
Mm-hmm.
Those are also very influential positions, and also to be on boards and commission. We've had over 700 boards and commission in the state at the statewide level, and we know that there's not enough women, there's not enough women of color on
Shirley
those
Leong has
seats.
written brilliantly about this with the Boston Club or whatever it's called that puts it out every year.
Right. So
Continue,
I think those are areas, and also really leaning into our communities, right?
What do you mean?
So in terms of there's also committees, boards and commissions locally. So what we're doing is we're saying we need to be at every level, both locally and statewide, to be able to really move the needle and make more progress. While I'm with Fredie, I am thrilled to be living in Massachusetts, but the reality is there's still more progress that we need to
How
make.
seriously do the women constitutional officers take these issues? Because this is a rare opportunity. I mean, the hope is that things like this will continue, but this is almost historic. Well, it is historic in Massachusetts. Are they consciously focused on things like what both of you are talking about, Fredie?
I think they totally are, and we so appreciate it. We've known them for years. In 2019, we did an event at Faneuil Hall to commemorate. Massachusetts was the 8th state to ratify the 19th Amendment, and we did a centennial event just before the pandemic hit, and we did an event at Faneuil Hall with like over 300 people. We had the Boston Children's Chorus and History of Play. Our speakers included the then Attorney General, Maura Healey, then Salem Mayor Kim Driscoll, then head of the Boston City Council, Andrea Campbell.
Oh, that's
so
great.
they've been with us a long time and are very excited about this work.
We're speaking with Fredie Kay, founder and president of the Massachusetts Women History Center, and Celia Blue, president and CEO of the Mass Women of Color Coalition. Celia, you mentioned the Massachusetts Hall of Fame deal. So how's that going to work? Are people, commission going to nominate people? Are they going to be online somewhere? Give me the details.
Well, I have to tell you, right now, this is the unsexy work that we're doing behind the scene. I'm just saying, right? Governance, people's eyes roll over and talk about governance, right? So we're doing the governance work, which is really important to make sure we have the highest standards, right? And that we're equitable and fair. That takes work behind the scenes. So first is working on that. And then, of course, if we need to do that, then what are going to be those eligibility criteria that are important? And then what's the process going to look like? So those are the workers, and we have a fabulous group of women that are working on this, which makes it really excited to work towards Fredie's vision, which we think is really needed. Only 16 states have a Women's History Center and Hall of Fame, and I think this work is even more important now.
It's really exciting because you think of, I think obviously for anybody, but particularly for young girls, to see the list of people in the state and who they were that probably half of us have never heard of, or maybe a lot of us have never heard of. Right. You know what I didn't know
Well, let's stay on that for a second. So where do we hear about these women in our history that we're mostly unaware of? On the website?
Yes, so if you go to mawomenshistory.org, thank you so much, and you will see exhibits.
Great.
You will see under resources, we have articles, we have biographies, we have panels, we have all kinds of things, and I brought some hard copies for you.
Oh, good. Oh, thank you.
But they're also on the website.
Okay.
And a couple for Jamie and Tamsin, who have been terrific to work with as well. So to wrap up a little piece of what Celia was talking about, so we're finalizing all of these eligibility standards and so forth, and we will be announcing that nominations are open. Nominations will be open to the general public. And we will be announcing that, hopefully, we're hoping to do it within Women's History Month, and then it'll be on our website, I'm sure it'll be on MAWOC's website, and we'll have people can submit nominees for both women and organizations. That's kind of a big deal.
Well, since you're the experts in women's history, it's a quiz for both of you. This should be okay. Who is the longest serving woman host of a talk radio show in Greater Boston? Oh, it's Marjorie Egan.
Marjorie.
I am?
Yeah.
Wow.
Oh, my God.
Did not know that. Did not know that. But you know what I wondered about? You mentioned
God.
in
She
one of
is,
these
by the
papers I read, in anticipation of you coming, that we wrote the book here on women's health. What were you talking about?
Our bodies ourselves.
That's what I wondered, which was a great, and they revamped it. They came out
Yes.
initially in the 70s, and then they revamped it, what, about 10 years ago or something
Well,
like
and
that?
now they're existing online, and they're at Suffolk University.
Yeah.
One of our partners, we've done some events together with them. They're spectacucular.
Okay.
And it's a big deal book, I think, for
It
people
is.
that knew nothing. You learned a lot.
So, starting with you, Fredie, and then Celia, tell us, obviously tell us the website when they forget when the events are that you're about to say. What's coming up that you want people to enter in their calendars, or at least have in their heads, starting with you, Fredie?
A couple of things, but then I hope I get to fit in a couple of history stories. But,
Sure. Actually, not sure.
Not sure.
We're going to have to go to your website. But tell us about events.
All right, so the big one is that you just mentioned. We have one tomorrow night in Lynn, where the Lieutenant Governor is joining us at Lynn Museum and Arts, which is a group effort that we've done for years. Celia and I are together on this with the League of Women Voters and several other organizations up on the North Shore. It's a great free and open to the public, but please register. The other one is we will be at the Museum of Science on Saturday for Women's History Day. We've done this for several years. We help them out with slides where we give them historical figures that they post up and so forth. But let me know, I'd love to slip in a history story. The history is incredible and nobody knows this history.
You can do it in 30 seconds. Yeah, we probably don't
Because
have
Celia,
time.
you want to hear, are there events you want to
Sure,
talk about?
there are
By the way, I'm so sorry about this, but we will urge people to go to the website and check out the story.
Right.
Celia.
No problem.
What,
Our website is maywalk.com, MAWOCC.com.
Yep.
We have the event tomorrow, but we also have a day of holistic healing and wellness on May 3rd at Clark University. All women are invited to attend. And then our big gala weekend in Boston on October 3rd and 4th at the Seaport Hotel.
And all these things are on both your websites that we talked about. Great. Congratulations to both of you, and it's great to have you. And thanks for the olive oil.
Yeah, I'm sorry. You're
Marjorie
right
has
down.
no respect for the clock.
You know,
we're
we're very
the
regulated
a-hole, but I am really
time-wise. No, Jim is
Thank
right.
you.
But thank you so
Thank you
much.
so
I'm
much.
very
Thank you
excited. And I've got my packet, and I'm going to learn a lot. And thank you so
That's
much
a
for the
votes for women's sash.
Oh, this is
thank you
great.
so much.
And a jail door pin for the women who went to jail, who survived jail and being force-fed. The stories in the packet.
Fabulous.
Thank you. Thank you,
Nice to
Celia.
meet
Thank
you.
you, Freddie.
Nice to meet you.
Yeah,
Good to
very
have you
much
both.
appreciate you being
Thank
here.
you.
We've been speaking with Freddie Kay, founder and president of the Massachusetts Women's History Center, along with Celia Blue, president and CEO of the Mass Women of Color Coalition. For more information about the center and all that's going on there, mawomenhistory.org. That, of course, is short for Massachusetts. mawomenhistory.org. Thank you both. Coming up after a quick break, just enough time for two more things. You're listening to Boston Public Radio, 89.7 GBH, live from the Boston Public Library and streaming at youtube.com/GBH News.
I'm Judy Ewell in for Arun Roth. Coming up on GBH's All Things Considered, the trial challenging the Wu administration's effort to renovate White Stadium is getting underway. Also, another city is pushing back against the MBTA Communities Act. Plus, the deadline for factories to stop making alternatives to obesity drugs may negatively impact those who can't afford the name brands. Those stories and all the day's news starting at 4 on GBH's All Things Considered.
Support for our programs comes from you.
And the Simmons Leadership Conference, a one-day event filled with inspiration, skill building, and networking. Thursday, March 20th, in person in Boston and online. InclusiveLeadership.com. And Beacon Circle patrons Tanya Phillips and Jeffrey Dover, proud to support GBH 89.7 and the commitment to local, national, and global journalism that inspires, engages, and supports diversity in the community.
Welcome back to Boston Public Radio. Marjorie Egan and Jim Browdy. We're live at the library and streaming at youtube.com/GBH News, as we do every day at about 12:50 something, 5. It's time for two more things. Marjorie, what's your one thing?
Give us back the Statue of Liberty. It was our gift to you, but apparently you despise her, so she will be happy here with us.
Who said that?
Those are the words of Raphael Glucksmann. He's a member of the European Parliament. He's obviously in France. He's a French politician. And he says that we have done wrong by our association with all these authoritarian governments, and he says that we don't deserve to have the Statue of Liberty in New York Harbor anymore. The White House, of course, pushed back, saying France instead should still be grateful for U.S. support during World War I and II, and Glucksman in turn shot back himself and said French gratitude for Americans' wartime sacrifices are eternal, but if the free world no longer interests the American government, then we will pick up the torch here in Europe.
You ever gone on a boat ride?
Yes.
How beautiful
yes.
is that?
Yes.
Is that,
and actually, you can go up. You can go up in the.
That I haven't done.
Yeah, you go right on Staten Island. You go
When
up
you get
inside the boat. Yeah, that's right.
It's really beautiful.
I kind of like that he gave us a hard time.
In any case, my one more thing is the tale of two companies. Remember DEI? That was the thing so many business and other institutions in America pretended they embraced after the murder of George Floyd, and now have abandoned like a hot potato so as not to upset Donald Trump. Well, not Starbucks. At their annual meeting a couple of days ago, the shareholder meeting, the CEO, his name is Brian Niccol, called diversity, listen to this, a key strength, and said Starbucks was a tremendously diverse organization and will continue to be a tremendously diverse organization. That is leadership. We've talked a lot about lack of leadership and courage in universities and businesses in this country. This guy who runs Starbucks should be a model. On the other hand, there is Target. There's one less than a mile from my house, and it's a one-stop place, so I go a decent amount. Last year, as you know, they took on LGBTQ-related items, took them off the shelves during Pride, and in the last week, some changes in their annual report. Listen to this. In 2024, they said they aim to foster, quote, an engaged, diverse, inclusive, and safe culture. That sounds pretty reasonable to me. This year's report, all they care about is an engaged culture. Diversity, safety, inclusion apparently no longer matter. So as you know, while my buying habits are far from pure, I am done with Target, not just for the 40 days that Pastor Jamal Bryant, that minister in Atlanta, is calling for, but for good. On the other hand, caramel ribbon crunch frappuccinos, here I come. And next time, if we have more time, because I know what you're thinking, Marjorie, maybe we can talk about my Tesla.
Okay, we can talk about your Tesla there.
Next time.
Okay. Up next, we are going to be talking with CNN's John King. He's going
GBH is committed to lifelong learning, and the Beacon Circle shares that commitment with gifts of $2,400 or more. It's one big way to help keep our community informed and connected. Learn more at gbh.org/Beacon Circle.
Support for GBH comes from you.
And Babson College, where you can earn a part-time MBA for your full-time life at the school ranked #2 best college in the U.S. by the Wall Street Journal. Graduate courses offered online or in person with remote options. babson.edu/part-time. And Seasons 4, the outdoor living store in Lexington, featuring over 100 styles of outdoor furniture delivered throughout New England, plus a wide selection of plants, statuary, and garden accessories. Spring events now in progress. Seasons4.com.
You're listening to 89.7 WGBH HD1 Boston. Online at gbhnews.org. GBH News. What matters to you?
Live from NPR News in Washington, I'm Lakshmi Singh. The Chief Justice of the United States, John Roberts, is rejecting the idea of impeaching judges for their decisions. He says if there's disagreement over a judicial decision, quote, the normal appellate review process exists for that purpose. As the head of the federal judiciary, Roberts issued a statement from the court today after President Trump called for the impeachment of a judge presiding over a deportations case. NPR's Jimena Bustillo says Trump posted on his social media website, Truth Social, that judges were standing in the way of him curbing illegal immigration.
The post appears to be directed at Judge James Boasberg, a federal judge in D.C. It was made the morning after Boasberg grilled the Justice Department about whether the government had ignored his order to not deport people using the Alien Enemies Act. The act is a wartime power that allows a streamlined deportation process. But DOJ lawyers were unable to answer questions about the flights that carried over 200 people to El Salvador around the time Boasberg issued his order. Trump officials said they did not violate the order, but they have also argued the judge is standing in their way. Jimena Bustillo, NPR News.
President Trump has concluded talks with Russian President Vladimir Putin. Both spoke by phone today as Trump seeks to secure Putin's commitment to a 30-day ceasefire with Ukraine. United Nations officials are expressing alarm over the Israeli airstrikes that have resumed in Gaza. The Associated Press capturing video of the injured streaming into a medical facility in Khan Yunis. The Gaza Health Ministry says more than 400 people have been killed since the attacks began overnight. NPR's Michelle Kellerman reports that the UN Secretary General and the top UN aid official are calling for resumption of a ceasefire.
UN Emergency Relief Coordinator Tom Fletcher puts it bluntly.
Overnight, our worst fears materialized. Airstrikes resumed across the entire Gaza Strip. Unconfirmed reports of hundreds of people killed.
He tells the Security Council that Palestinians in Gaza are living in, quote, abject fear, and humanitarian aid is being blocked. Fletcher and the UN Secretary General are calling on Israel to allow in aid and get back to a ceasefire that had been working for a couple of months. Israel says it resumed airstrikes because Hamas refused to release more of the hostages who were abducted from Israel on October 7th of 2023. Michelle Kellerman, NPR News, the State Department.
And again, the Gaza Health Ministry says more than 400 people were killed and more than 500 others were injured. At last check on Wall Street, the Dow Jones Industrial Average was down 340 points at 41,500. The S&P 500 down more than 1%, and the Nasdaq is now off 1.5%. From Washington, this is NPR News.
Good afternoon. With the latest from the GBH Newsroom, I'm Henry Santoro. The MBTA Communities Act is facing another legal challenge, this time from residents in Winthrop. The law requires cities and towns served by the T to zone for more multifamily housing, but it's faced pushback from a number of communities. Winthrop resident Diana Vaines is an attorney representing herself and her neighbors in a new lawsuit against the state. She says the law puts an unfair financial burden on the city.
We can't afford to comply with this law. We're already growing faster than we can afford, and to that end, our schools are also over capacity.
The Winthrop suit follows similar legal challenges in place like Marshfield, Handsome, and Rentham, and they follow the state's auditor's finding last month that the MBTA Communities Act is an unfunded mandate, with the state forcing cities and towns to comply without providing the financial support to do so. Vaccine-related contracts between Boston Children's Hospital and multiple federal agencies have stopped as part of President Donald Trump's efforts to drastically cut federal funding that doesn't align with his policy views. The Herald reports that the hospital is the leading recipient of pediatric research funding from the National Institutes of Health, with the facility getting more than $200 million each year. As Trump continues to cut funds to the NIH, analysts say the end result is that annual funding for Boston Children's Hospital could eventually be cut in half. We're at 48 degrees in Boston right now. I'm Henry Santoro. This is GBH News.
Support for NPR comes from NPR stations. Other contributors include BetterHelp, committed to helping clients with issues ranging from relationship challenges and goal setting to grief and depression. Learn more at betterhelp.com/public. This is NPR.
It's Jim Browdy. I am Marjorie Egan. Welcome to hour number 3 of Boston Public Radio, 89.7 GBH. We are broadcasting live from the Boston Public Library and streaming at youtube.com/GBH News. Thank you. We are... Oops, it's your turn, Jim. Hello again, Jim.
Hi there. We're about to be joined on Zoom by CNN's chief national correspondent, who now only does interviews with us from an automobile somewhere. He's the man behind the brilliant All Over the Map thing, most recently in Canada. It was great. We'll talk about that. John, it's great to see you.
Sometimes in airports, sometimes the back seat of a car.
Oh, that's right.
Greetings from the north side of Milwaukee. I joined you from here a couple times last year during the election campaign, and we're back now in one of the swingiest of the swing states. But happy Tuesday.
And well, you're a man on the move, and that's why we hear all these great stories from people, and I'm always kind of surprised by some of the things people say that look so normal. I don't know what to make of it. But anyway, we've had a lot of back and forth over judges issuing in stays or injunctions. The one most recently is a controversial one about the men who were, according to the government, migrants who were shipped back to, was it Venezuela, I believe? Were they shipped back to
El Salvador.
El Salvador.
They were Venezuelan.
Shipped back to El Salvador. Sorry about that. And we don't know how many of them were what the deal was with every individual. But in any case, it was a question about a judge saying that the plane should come back and dispute over the times. And Trump has talked about impeaching the judge who was presiding over this deportation case. We now have a statement from the Chief Justice of the Supreme Court, John Roberts, saying that no one should be impeached, quote, for more than 2 centuries. It's been established the impeachment is not an appropriate response to disagreement concerning a judicial decision. The normal appellate review process exists for that purpose. So I think this is extraordinary that the Chief Justice would issue a statement like this. And what are we to make of this in terms of the constitutional crisis we keep talking about?
Well, I think, number one, it is rare. It's extraordinary, beyond extraordinary, for the Chief Justice to essentially say, Mr. President, stop. That's a shot from the Chief Justice of the United States to the President of the United States that you can appeal. This is a district court judge. You can appeal to the appellate court, and maybe it ends up before us here on the Supreme Court. But stop. It's not the way we do business in the United States of America. The question is, what will the Trump White House say? Because you've had top advisors to this president saying that judges have no right, that judges have no standing to issue rulings on cases brought in federal courts. And so we talked about this before, we're in a constitutional test. Is it about to become a constitutional crisis? Many of these cases that are now in the lower courts are ultimately going to make their way to the Supreme Court. This is a Supreme Court with a number of justices who are on record in past cases and back when they were confirmed, expressing support, in general at least, for more presidential power, more executive branch power. But I take those words from the Chief Justice as Mr. President, we're watching all of this. We'll judge the cases when they get here, but we're watching your conduct now and we find it out of bounds. And there are so many issues, whether it's the firing of federal workers, whether it's the president's policies about these deportation issues, whether the president can keep doing things after a judge says stop doing things. And so we know the next several months, if not the next 2 or 3 years of our lives, are going to be spent tracking these cases as they go through the court. And I do think it's remarkable for the Chief Justice to make this public statement, essentially saying, at the moment, Mr. President, you're the one who's out of bounds.
I want to speak about the constitutional crisis thing because I fear that sort of like when we all talked about threats to democracy during the campaign, no one knew what that meant. I'm not convinced people know what this means. While there's been a lot of writing and reporting that, well, technically was the plane on its way to El Salvador over international waters, had it landed? It seems to me the Trump administration isn't even arguing that anymore. They're arguing that they don't give a damn what the courts have to say. Here's Tom Homan, the border czar, on Fox yesterday, saying outright he doesn't care what the court thinks when it comes to deporting migrants. Here he is. Here's what he said. We have a problem. I wake up every morning loving my job because I work for the greatest president in the history of my life. We're going to make this country safe again. I'm proud to be a part of this administration. We are not stopping. I don't care what the judges think. I don't care what the left thinks. We are coming, and they're relying on this couple 100-year-old Alien Enemies Act. But their position is that there's no right to due process, correct me if I'm wrong, John, for people in these situations when the president orders these deportations. And that, again, that the courts have no power to even rule on these things. That is the making of a constitutional crisis when a leader of one branch of government is in the midst of refusing to comply with an order from another branch of government. Is that a fair summary of where we are, John King?
It's more than fair. First, on the due process question, that's something that'll be litigated in the court. The Trump administration's position is, these people are in the country illegally, therefore they are not afforded the rights that you and I have as citizens. We'll see how that plays out in the courts. Traditionally, it has been if you are on U.S. soil, you get due process. Even if you're not supposed to be on U.S. soil, you're still treated through our court system with respect and dignity until the ultimate ruling, which may be you have to go home, which may be you go to prison, but that you're treated through that process. That's one test. But the bigger test is what you mentioned, where Tom Homan says, I don't care what a judge says. That is a giant, that's the executive branch saying, we don't believe in the checks and balances on which our system is based, on the three branches, the legislative branch, the judicial branch, and the executive branch. And so that's just one piece of it. That's this one case about this one group of immigrants where a judge says, you can't, no, you cannot fly them out of the country until I settle the law here and settle these questions. And the administration essentially saying, we don't care. We don't respect your authority. That's one. You're also going to see it on a lot of these spending cuts and firing federal workers and shutting down federal programs, because again, a lot of the spending is done by Congress. Congress enacted laws that say this department exists. Congress enacted laws that says this program exists. And Congress allocated the money for those departments and those programs. And Trump is saying, I don't care. I can do what I want. And so I'm oversimplifying it a little bit, but we're going to have the test of our, the whole system has been set up since day one, 249 years now, going into 250, on the idea that you have three co-equal branches of government. Each has its lane, each has its authority. They're supposed to respect each other. There's supposed to be checks and balances. And the Trump administration is, testing the threading, if you will, testing the seams all over the place.
John, can I just follow up on one thing here? This is probably a waste of your time to even ask this question. We know that the vast majority of Republicans in Congress are too scared to assert their own rights over things like appropriations because they're too busy on bended knee for the president. Has one member, a Republican member, for example, of the Judiciary Committee, spoken up and said that he or she is concerned about the impeachment threat, the issue of not complying with a legitimate court order? Have we heard a peep out of any of these people?
I'm on the road today, so what I say might not be fair and full in the sense that I can't track every second because I'm on the road, but I haven't seen or heard it just glancing through my email and the reporting from our Hill staff. That doesn't mean there hasn't been one or two, but I think the bigger question is why aren't there dozens? Why aren't there, in a sense that, this is just, it's just not the way. But you're right about privately, the impeach this judge is relatively new from the president. I will tell you that privately, you're hearing more and more, especially from Republicans in, purple House districts or purple states who might have to win statewide in 2 years, saying that, they wish the president would dial it back a little bit. They wish the president would focus on the economy and on securing the border, but just securing the border. And they think he's gone over the line in some things, but they won't say it publicly, because if they say it publicly, the White House threatens a primary against them, and that's what they worry about.
I'm not a lawyer, but Jim is, and maybe you know about this, John. The thing I'm afraid of is that Trump can break any laws he wants, because the same John Roberts who says don't impeach the justice gave him immunity from many of his official acts as the president. So why can't Trump break any laws that he wants to?
Well, you may not be a lawyer, Marjorie, but you may be very smartly touching on what's going to happen when some of these cases get to the Supreme Court, where those saying the administration has crossed the line are going to cite precedent, they're going to cite congressional authority, they're going to cite legislation, they're going to cite past court cases, and they're going to say this is not the president's purview. And the White House is probably going to stand up and say, we think it is. And we think this court has actually said the president can essentially do what he wants. And so the court is going to have to reconsider, I think, when the court gets these cases, what it said about Trump again, the court would say, I think, can't speak for the Supreme Court, but we were talking about, the president's official acts. Official acts don't mean you can violate congressional statutes, but we'll see. I think that the point you raise is going to be a key subtext of these cases when they make it to the Supreme Court, because the administration is going to argue, no, you're on the record saying this president can essentially do what he wants.
Talking to John King. John, can we move to international affairs? Apparently, Donald Trump has completed his phone conversation with Putin about the fate of Ukraine, should there be a resolution here. Do we have any idea? And he said it went well, whatever that means. It was a perfect
and the Russians
call.
Apparently also say it went very well. We don't have any of the details yet.
Okay.
But again, you want to talk about elections have consequences and what a turn we've taken with Joe Biden in the White House versus Donald Trump in the White House in a little more than 50 days. The United States position, back on January 19th, was that Putin invaded Ukraine, and Putin has to get out, and Putin should have no leverage in the talks because he invaded a democratic country. Trump's position is, Putin, we need to end this war, which is a goal everybody shares, I would hope. But Trump's standard is, and that means, Ukraine has to make territorial concessions. And he said the other day that, maybe Ukraine's largest nuclear plant either should be under Russian control or at least share energy with Russia. So Trump's posture coming into this has been to abandon Ukraine and largely say, we're going to negotiate this, but from the beginning, I'm going to adopt several of Putin's positions going into it. That doesn't mean you can get to the finish line. It doesn't mean Putin really wants to have an agreement to end the war. But so we'll see when the details come out in this conversation, but it is quite striking that Trump has essentially, he's put his thumb on the scale, but he's put his thumb on the scale in Putin's favor at the beginning of these conversations. So we'll see what Putin decides, what he wants, what he thinks he can get from the White House. But then remember, it's Ukraine. It's a sovereign country. What does President Zelensky want? He's not at the table right now. And then how do the European allies, the NATO allies and Ukraine's neighbors, will they support, if Donald Trump actually can broker something with Vladimir Putin, can he sell it, not only to Ukraine, but to Europe? So we're at another, this is one of the things I say all the time, Donald Trump keeps taking us to places we've never been. We're at a profound crossroads here in terms of our alliances, our partnerships, our traditions in Europe, and our traditions of supporting democracies over dictators. And we'll see how it plays.
Talking to John King from CNN.
So we did have a brief ceasefire between Israel and Palestine, and Hamas, I should say. Now a surprise Israeli airstrike has killed more than 400 people, including women and children. What's this all about?
Well, it's about, number one, Netanyahu saying that, Hamas has not agreed to release all the hostages on his timetable, but it's clearly Netanyahu knows, again, you want to talk about what a difference in the White House. I know a lot of progressives were mad at Joe Biden in the White House, thinking that he was giving Netanyahu too much of a green light, or he was not tough enough on Netanyahu. He was not speaking out more in terms of the Palestinians and to end the suffering of innocent civilians, even if you're going to, wage war against Hamas, a terrorist organization. Well, Donald Trump and Netanyahu, Donald Trump is the one who said, you release all the hostages or there's going to be hell. So there's your green light to Netanyahu right there. There will be hell to pay if you don't release the hostages. So Netanyahu knows knows he has the backing of the President of the United States. That doesn't mean that the world will not react with outrage again. Say that you had a fragile ceasefire, but you at least had a ceasefire. There were hostages being released and Palestinian prisoners being released. So there was a calmer moment. There was not calm, but there was a calmer moment, and now that's gone. Now that's gone, and we see what goes from here.
I should say the AP is saying it's 400. Other people are saying it's 300. So
Whatever
I'm not sure
is,
if it's 300 or 400, but it's a lot of people that were killed.
So, John, your own poll, CNN's poll and other polls have showed that even Democrats don't like Democrats. And Democrats in power don't like other Democrats in power. So you're pretty good at political history since that 1988 beginning as a little cub reporter for Associated Press. Is there a historical precedent for the Democrats being not only this unpopular with the public, but internally being this divided as the sort of the AOC and Schumer flank, for lack of a better expression?
Certainly not at this volume and this public, Jim. And part of that is the age we live in, the technology we live in, the social media generation we live in, the digital age we live in. When Mondale lost 49 states and then Dukakis lost 40 states, I guess Dukakis could spin that as progress, right? He won 9 more than Walter Mondale.
We love Dukakis.
I don't mean to be snarky about that, but there was a big debate in the party, and that's how Bill Clinton and the Democratic Leadership Council came about. A bunch of more moderate, pro-business Democrats founded an organization to essentially challenge the party, saying you're too liberal, you're too beholden to special interest groups, and we're going to do it differently. There was no X, and there was no social media, and there weren't podcasts everywhere in those days, and people didn't have a supercomputer in their pocket where they could post a video saying, Chuck Schumer's a clown and Chuck Schumer shouldn't be the leader anymore. So it's hard to compare and contrast, but that how raw it is and how public it is quite striking. Schumer saying, it would have been even worse if we had shut down the government. That Trump and Musk would have done even more extreme things. He may have a point there, but a lot of Democrats still wanted him to stand up, still wanted him to not give Donald Trump any votes to do these things. We've talked about this a little before. When the Republicans were out of power, when Biden was president, Trump was still by far overwhelmingly their voice. The Democrats don't have a voice. And so at the grassroots, I'm in Milwaukee trying to see if grassroots organizations that knock on doors and try to get people to vote, if they've learned the lessons from 5 months ago. And they're frustrated. It's hard to tell people to care, to vote, this state Supreme Court election coming up here, hard to tell them to vote when they look at their leadership and they say, why aren't you fighting harder? Why aren't you fighting smarter? And so the party's a mess right now. I don't know another word for it. The party is a mess right now.
Well, speaking of mess, the big issue, I guess, is what direction do people who are potential and actual supporters of Democrats in general want it to go? And I have to say, I thought that, be as kind as I can be, this California Governor Newsom appealing to the cheap seats with this thing being on his own and other people's podcasts from the extreme right of America, not just Republicans, which is totally fine, but extreme lunatics, apparently is playing not well at all. And he's suffering as a result of this. Is there a moral to that story, or is that an aberration, in your opinion?
I don't know if we know the answer to that. Look, that's sort of way out there, right? So Democrats are trying to figure out, how do you appeal to Trump voters? How do you get into this podcast space? How do you get into this place where disaffected voters, low information voters, whatever you want to call them, I think some of those terms are pejorative, but people who aren't active in politics, who don't read every email like we do, who aren't online all day long, how do you reach them? And so on the one hand, you could say, good for Governor Newsom for experimenting and trying to reach into these places where we know Donald Trump had great success in finding people and motivating them. What progressives get mad about is, why are you talking to Steve Bannon? Why are you talking to these people who they view as haters and as reckless and as reprehensible, what they want to do? Supporters of January 6th, for example, people who say, Trump can do anything he wants. And so, the test here is, you try to do new things, you try to reach out to new people, and a lot of Democrats are saying, maybe that idea was a good one, Governor Newsom, but in practice, the people you're having conversations with are people we want no part of, and we don't think any Democrat should be on this, to have them in the conversation, to be on the same stage with them, in the same forum with them, essentially, affords them some respect, right? You're recognizing that they speak to somebody, and the Democrats would rather speak to those voters, not speak to people like Steve Bannon, who they think are just bad actors who do not deserve the dignity of that conversation.
You know, we've told this story a million times before, but back in 2016, when we were up in New Hampshire, we were asking a bunch of voters that were torn between Donald Trump and Bernie Sanders.
No, we went to people who are undecided.
Yes,
right.
They were trying to say, wow, that's odd, but Trump is running as a populist. Bernie Sanders obviously talks about the populist meat and potato, kitchen table issues all the time. Now, there's somebody else that does too, AOC, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, who I think has been caricatured as some, far left nut, and people go after her because she's a woman or whatever it is. But she's very good online. She has, when you talk to people that are in their 20s and 30s, there are a lot of people that are very enthusiastic about her. And when I see Chuck Schumer,
a lot of people in their 60s and 70s are enthusiastic about her too.
Well, I guess I'm saying that they have young people in the party, and when Chuck Schumer with the flip phone. I mean, what is the point of constantly? I have still got a flip phone. Are we supposed to think that's impressive? I mean, I'm a technological dope, and even I don't have a flip phone. So I mean, it's just I can see her, and I know I've been talking about age endlessly. Jim is sick of hearing me say this, but David Hogg, the kid that just
I love David
that just got out of Harvard, that was a Parkland shooter survivor, that is a very smart, very impressive.
Great organizer.
They need young people. And the fact that the Democrats voted for the guy Conley, who seems like a very nice guy, who could have led that committee and had been like kind of back and forth with Republicans, I don't know. It just seems you got to be telegenic, John. I hate to say that, but you got to be telegenic these days. They're both very telegenic. Chuck Schumer is not.
Marjorie's a little superficial, John, but go ahead.
The whole country's superficial. Take a look.
I have a magic wall, but there are days when I really wish I had a flip phone. Look, you're highlighting something. I think that if you're a big party, you're going to have young people and you're going to have older people. I do think that there is a generational. If you think a generational pot of water that's boiling, it's been bubbling for quite some time, right? About should Joe Biden have been president? Should he? He finally did get out, but should he have even tried to run for a second term? Dianne Feinstein, who has passed on, I don't mean, no disrespect, but there were a lot of Democrats when she was left saying, she stayed too long. Nancy Pelosi, did you stay too long? Chuck Schumer, did you stay too long? Mitch McConnell, on the other side, did you stay too long? Donald Trump is not a young man, by the way, and when he is out of the way, there will be the same generational change in the Republican Party. So that's coming, without a doubt. And it's playing out now in an issues perspective. The way I look at it is that, is Chuck Schumer going to run for re-election again? I believe he'll survive as leader. There's a lot of grumbling about it, but I think he'll survive as leader right now. Does he run for re-election? We're going to go through this. There's a special election here in Wisconsin in a month. There are elections, off-year elections in Virginia and New Jersey. Then we go into the midterms. This is an opportunity for Democrats, whether it's a liberal like AOC, a more moderate like Andy Beshear, the governor of Kentucky. This is their stage to step forward.
He's my guy too. I like him too.
And try to convince people. We're new, we're different, we're the next generation. Or let's talk about an issue, right? Not just what's your biography, how old are you, where are you from geographically, but does somebody come up with a way to talk about Trump or a way to talk about Musk, or I would argue more importantly, a way to talk about the economy and the cost of living today and the jobs of the future tomorrow and beyond that is compelling and that gets people to listen, even if they might think, I thought, for an example, like an AOC, I thought she was too liberal, or she's from New York and I think, that's big city. Can you find a way to crack through and say, I'm talking in a compelling way? Maybe you want to listen. That's the challenge for all Democrats in the next 2 years. And then you get through the midterm cycle, and then immediately we're into 2028. Yeah. But the party right now has no one voice. In some ways, that's quite normal. They're out of power. They have no one voice. But when you have no one voice, it can be very confusing to your voters. And it can be essentially very contradictory if you have voices that are speaking either about different issues or from a very, very different ideological perspective.
John, obviously the social media piece is huge with people that are young, and it's not really big with people who are not.
Well, that's not true. They hire staff, and they do.
Yeah, but look at the staff did, though. That was one of the big lessons of the election, that the Republicans were doing new and brighter ways to reach people, and the Democrats were still doing the old.
Well, what Schumer did you see?
He was
typing up his notes and handing them out to people around me. Before you go, I accuse the Republicans of being sycophantic. I'm about to be. I know I speak for Marjorie. These things you do, where you talk to real people, are so fabulously insightful. Even Marty Baron, the former editor of the Washington Post, who's with us at News, commented on our alienating our Canadian neighbors. Here's a clip of Darryl Lamb, he's the brand manager of Legacy Liquor Stores in British Columbia, who's considering removing U.S. alcohol products from his shelves to boycott Trump's tariffs. The other voice you'll hear is obviously John's.
We've been in this together for a long time. We fought wars together. We went to Afghanistan. We did all this stuff together. Why? What are you doing here?
So mad at Trump for what he's saying about Canada that they're saying, get it out of here.
No, 100%. Absolutely. I'm just worried about this eternal relationship that we've had for 200 plus years being soured for 4.
This was not aberrational, what this guy said to you, was it, John?
No, it was quite striking on our visit. Canadians, they almost played to the cliche by saying, you all think we're too polite and we're so nice and, we're kind of meek. They were pissed off, forgive my language, but whether it was the CEO of a steel company or Darryl Lamb, who's the brand manager at this liquor store, to everything in between, from your Uber drivers to people involved in business, in what has been a remarkably lucrative and productive trade relationship for both countries for many, many years. So they think Donald Trump's math is wrong about economics, that it's just working for everybody. They understand maybe tariffs on China. They even understand the occasional fight about Canadian dairy or Canadian lumber. But this whole sweeping, you're ripping us off, they say it's just wrong. And then they have he's not being neighborly. They think, wait, we're a fellow democracy. We don't have a high security defended border because we share the same values and we get along and we're neighbors. So they're both insulted by his economics, which they think bad and foolish, but they're more insulted by his manners, which they just think are like, we're your friends. We're a fellow democracy, and you're being a jerk by calling our prime minister governor, by saying that we should be the 51st state. And so again, this is not a short-term thing for them. They're looking for new markets for their products, right? So if the trade war is calmed down, the United States wants to buy things, maybe they won't be on the shelves to buy because the Canadians are selling them somewhere else. And they're going more to Europe. And saying, well, we're a NATO country. The new prime minister joked the other day, there's an Article 5 in NATO that if the United States tries to annex us, the other NATO countries will have to come to our aid. He was kind of joking to soft pedal it, but that's where we are.
Yeah.
That's where we are. Trump is causing everybody to fundamentally rethink their relationship with the United States economically, from a national security perspective, and I would argue more importantly, can I trust this guy? The other stuff all flows from trust and respect. And they don't feel respect from him, and therefore they don't trust him. And because they don't trust him, they don't trust the United States of America.
Marjorie's going through that same re-examination. I want you to know, John. John, before you go, you coming opening day or no?
I can't make it to opening day. I got to work, but I'd love to be there.
Well,
they're going to be better this year. They're going to be better this year.
John, it's great to see you. Be well. We love talking to you. Take care of yourself.
John King, thank you very much, and great reporting from Canada.
It is great.
We've been speaking with CNN Chief National Correspondent John King, who is behind this terrific reporting project All Over the Map, where he talks to real people about their real concerns in different parts of the country and also this time in Canada. After a quick break, we're going to open the lines to ask you about kid-friendly restaurants and the fine line between being kid-friendly and anti-adult. You're listening to Boston Public Radio 89.7 GBH, live from the Boston Public Library and streaming at youtube.com/GBH News.
I'm Judy Ewell in for Arun Roth. Coming up on GBH's All Things Considered, the trial challenging the Wu administration's effort to renovate White Stadium is getting underway. Also, another city is pushing back against the MBTA Communities Act. Plus, the deadline for factories to stop making alternatives to obesity drugs may negatively impact those who can't afford the name brands. Those stories and all the day's news starting at 4 on GBH's All Things Considered.
Our programs are made possible thanks to you.
And The Huntington, presenting The Triumph of Love, Marivoux's beloved classic where mistaken identities, hilarious complications, and deeply felt desires collide. On stage March 7th through April 6th. huntingtontheater.org. And Explo. Explo's Boston area summer program lets middle schoolers be architects, lawyers, engineers, and more. Day and overnight options at explo.org/summer. General enrollment deadline April 1st.
Welcome back to Boston Public Radio. Marjorie Egan, Jim Bradley. We're live at the library, streaming at youtube.com/GBH News. We end the show today with yet another etiquette talker. Today's is prompted by Somerville's Dragon Pizza. We mentioned this yesterday.
Yep.
Posting new guidelines for families with young kids dining at their establishment. The restaurant reportedly kicked a family out, alleging the parents were neglectful of their kids who were running rampant through the pizza parlor. Hear the words straight from the Dragon's mouth, the owner of the joint. Respect the pizza. We do not welcome parents who do not want to share a dining experience with their children. We loathe parents who use store-provided games as babysitters while they ignore their children. We do not appreciate parents who treat our pizza as a cheap, simple option to feed their children until they have their own dinner. So the post is actually more about parents than it is about kids, but the lines are open at 877-301-8970. Is there a line between a family-friendly pizza shop and you know what you saw here? What do you think about kids at restaurants in general? We've talked before about restaurants that set child-free hours. For example, you can't have a kid in a restaurant after 5 o'clock. I vote for that. How do we balance being a family-friendly society with the inevitable chaos and lawlessness that comes from being a kid? And furthermore, one other option is pick a number. If the entree, what do you think of this, Marty? If the entree is more than, let's say, $30, no kids at all. Not a time zone, no kids at all. So kids in restaurants, 877-301-8970. And how do you feel? I love this guy. I don't know him, by the way. The guy that owns, it's in Davis Square, Dragon's Pizza.
I've met him because I said yesterday, my youngest daughter has worked at Dragon Pizza.
What do you
she
think of
occasionally
him?
still works there. I called my daughter to get the scoop. She, no fool, she said no comment. She couldn't talk to me, only off the record. You know, so I don't have the scoop. But
What do you think of the guy?
She thinks he's great.
Now, what do you think of the guy?
I think the guy is great, and I think the pizza joint is great, and I love that he stood up to the Barstool Sports guy who was, you know,
David
outside
Portnoy.
saying his pizza was terrible. The pizza's great, the drinks are great, and it's in Davis Square, which is a great location to go have a pizza.
It is.
So I think the thing was, as he said, you know, it's a pizza joint, so I expect you are going to have a lot of kids in there, but you know, we've all seen this, you know, where the parents are doing whatever they're doing and the kids are swinging from the rafters and nobody pays any attention, or they're harassing other people. And one thing that is tough, and you know, I've got 3 kids. I've been taking them to places. They're adults, but back when they were little and we went somewhere and they started crying and just disturbing other people, you leave.
Exactly.
You leave. You don't sit there, especially in an expensive restaurant. You feel really bad for people that, especially like young couples, they have a, you know,
They can only afford to go out every once in a while.
Yes, or
right.
they've got kids at home, they had to hire a babysitter, and they go out for a nice romantic dinner, they got some kid crying next to them. I mean, I don't know why you wouldn't leave. So anyway, I'm all for no kids in expensive restaurants. Pizza joints is a different thing.
Well,
but you got to watch your kids.
But why is there have to be a kid in a restaurant after 5 o'clock anyway? Wherever it is.
I mean, because you can go to Bertucci's or something after 5 o'clock, or pizza place after 5 o'clock. You don't have to say 5 o'clock.
Yes, you do.
I don't think so.
5:15.
I mean, you know, you could when you get to
5:20.
When you get to be 3.5, Jim, you can stay out till 7. How's
Now,
that?
here's an anonymous texter. I want to know what you think about this. The owner of Dragon Pizza, that's what we're talking about, just had to ask Bill Belichick to keep a closer eye on his girlfriend in the shop.
Right.
That is really unkind. Can we put that photo up again?
She was pulling her Cirque du Soleil moves right there.
She can really move, that woman.
Pizza oven.
877-301-8970. You can comment on the Dragon Pizza guy if you want, but we're more concerned. How do you feel about kids and restaurants? Should there be rules? Obviously, they should be well behaved. Don't waste our time with that. But the issue is, when should they be allowed there? Should there be no limit if they're well behaved? They can be there anytime. Do you want to spend a ton of dough on a restaurant and have a little 3-year-old playing on an iPad at the next table? I don't. And I'm not anti-kid kind of thing. I'm just anti-kid in that sort of
Although
setting.
I have to say, iPads have been a big breakthrough for kids at restaurants.
Yeah.
Because they're so addicted to the iPad, they would never look up from it the entire time.
I know, but that still doesn't create the right feel, does it?
Doesn't create the right feel.
Thank you.
Want to play a little sound from Arthur, PBS Arthur?
Sure, why not?
Before we get this rolling?
Yeah, what is it?
Okay, here's a little sound, like I said, from Arthur, great show on PBS. We hope kids and parents can learn from this, an episode where little sister DW makes a scene while out to dinner.
DW punched her salad and it exploded all over the waiter, and everyone was staring at us.
They were not. Everybody's making this into such a big deal.
No more restaurants for you, young lady, until you can behave and learn to eat what's placed in front of you. Now go to your room.
There you go.
Do you hear what Trump did?
What?
Banned Arthur saying no special treatment for aardvarks. That was early. Thank you very much, whoever did that. Let's go to Sharon in Waltham. You were first on Boston Public Radio. Welcome to the show, Sharon. Hi.
Hi, how you doing today?
I think we're well. Thanks for asking. What's up?
Okay. So, you know, we
brought our 3 girls to any restaurant, and they were very well behaved, but we set them up for success.
What does that mean?
We didn't go at the high time of everyone being that we go when they first open. We would maybe look at the menu ahead of time so we knew what we were going to order.
Oh.
So then we didn't wait around for the food for so long, so they get antsy. So we just, a little planning ahead can make it easier on everyone. And if they got overtired or whatever, it's time to go. You pack up and you leave.
Yeah.
Well, there's a responsible parent.
Yeah, you can bring them toys, stuff they can play with. I mean, you see that a lot, like in airplanes. You see people that bring their kids to church, they bring them coloring books and stuff like that. Sharon, that was a great call. Thank you.
I thought she said when they planned for success, I thought she was going to say she gave all 3 of her kids melatonin when they got to the restaurant.
Well, people give the kid
yeah, I know.
Benadryl on airplanes.
I know that.
And
What do you think that's about?
I think they want the kids to sleep on the airplane. Okay, John in Beverly says a local brewery in Andover allows children to be brought inside as like a daycare center with alcohol, a-hole parents who just want to let the kids run rampant. Definitely a 30 to 40-year-old parenting thing.
How do you feel about that? You're much more tolerant than I. You okay with that?
Well, if
you go to a brewery, do you want a little kid at a brewery?
It depends. If it's one of those beer garden things that's outside and kids are running around, I don't care. I don't care. It's people sitting next to me, close quarters.
How about a little pen in the corner? You pen them. I'm serious. You're like, I don't mean you handcuff them.
I know.
You like pen them off in the corner.
Remember this daycare operator got in trouble a few years ago because she Velcroed the kids
to the
wall.
Yeah, it's true.
Yeah, you can do that. Where you just have the kids in their little car seats Velcroed to the wall. Their little feet and hands can move, but they have to...
That's fine, but it shouldn't be more than like 2 or 3 minutes at a time. Let's go to Anne-Marie. You're in Natick. You're on Boston Public Radio. Welcome to the show. Hi.
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 I was at a restaurant Friday night, and there were maybe 20 children there, maybe a little bit more.
Yeah.
The parents came prepared to have things for the children to do.
There you go.
The oldest probably was 6, and they were really good. And I give credit to the parents.
What did they come prepared to keep them busy with? What kind of things?
They had some coloring books.
Oh.
They had some books. They put the children together so they could talk.
Oh.
And they let them move around a little bit, but they stayed next to the tables.
There you go.
Now, even though that worked out well, Anne-Marie, if you had the choice between well-behaved kids with good plans from the parents or no kids at the next table, what would you choose? Tell the truth.
I wouldn't care if the kid was well prepared, well managed.
There you go.
Better woman
Anne-Marie is
than I.
very nice. She also give them a couple of
Anne-Marie,
cocktails.
thanks.
And they could just kind of slide right underneath the table there.
Yeah, like their parents.
Okay. Steven says, Jim, I work at a sandwich shop, and you wouldn't believe how some parents show up and want their kids' sandwich cut into 12 pieces.
This was not 12 pieces, it was 4 pieces.
That is about Jim, who eats his sandwich in 6 pieces. And by the way, somebody's asking why we stand up. A texter wants to know why we stand up, Jim.
They did?
Tracy in New Hampshire.
Why?
Yeah, this is my first time watching Jim and Marjorie on YouTube. Do they always stand up? If so, why? And
Well,
she
why don't
says
you
she's a big
answer
fan.
that? The answer is yes, we do.
We do.
What's the reason
Well,
for that?
the reason is that you have more energy.
You do.
Standing up.
You do.
If you sit down for 3 hours, you have less energy. That is our, we heard that from Mike Barnacle.
We did.
Remember
That's
that?
how we learned that. His
That's
show
why we
used
had
to
the high desk.
precede ours
It's
on
true.
the old radio station.
Yeah, if you can sit down, you get too tired.
You can also make a quick escape this
Also,
way,
I can't
too, so-
I can't move back and forth constantly if I'm sitting down.
Well, that's what another person says. I don't know why they're asking this today. This is another texter.
Yeah.
I'm afraid Marjorie needs a railing behind her. Why are they on a dais?
Yeah, I don't know why
Those
I
are
move back
really
and
deep
forth all the
questions,
time,
by
but
the
I
way.
do. Anyway, Peter from New Hampshire, thank you for calling.
Hello, Peter in New Hampshire.
Hey guys, well,
hi.
What a thrill! First time, long time. Jim, I've spoken with you once before, and I lied.
What'd you lie about?
I saw you in a Whole Foods in Cambridge,
Yeah, how was that?
and you hosted you were taller than I expected,
Yeah.
but you had hosted a debate the night before.
Yeah.
I knew that because I was listening to the show.
Yeah.
I didn't watch the debate, but I said, "Hey Jim, great job on the debate." And you were very thankful.
Well, can I tell
And was just
you? You
nervous.
did the
I
right
didn't
thing,
know.
Peter. You did the right thing. And I am forever grateful. Thank
Yeah,
you for
I'm
admitting
glad.
it. Okay, what else you got?
I'm glad. But so my wife and I own a brewery in New Hampshire.
Oh, what's the name and where? Tell us.
Backhill Beer Company in Rochester. Thank
Great.
you for that.
Nice.
It was, but yeah, so we tap rooms have an interesting relationship with families and kids. We obviously welcome families and children in our space. But man, there's nothing worse. We had a kid once who we have a lot of potted plants. He was digging the dirt out of the potted plants and throwing it all over the floor. And his parents weren't paying attention at all.
That's
It puts our employees in a really terrible situation.
So what'd you do? What'd you do?
Well, it was our taproom manager had to deal with it, and he texted me. He's like, "Hey, I'm sweeping up dirt. I don't know what to do, but like this kid is causing problems for other people."
Oh
And
God!
it's obviously his parents who aren't paying attention. So anyway, we just kind of said to the parents, "Hey, can you just pay attention to your kid?" And then,
What'd they say?
They said, "Oh, they were apologetic, but it's kind of like, why does it have to get to that point?"
So Peter, one more time, what's the name of the joint?
Back Hill Beer Company in Rochester, New Hampshire.
Fabulous. Back Hill Beer Company.
Yeah.
Great.
Well, that's
celebrating 5 years in October.
Congratulations, and thank you for the call. That's what the Dragon Pizza
By the way, how'd
owner
you think
guy-
I did on the next debate, Peter?
Say that again, Jim?
How'd you think I did on the next debate?
I'm sure you did great, too.
Okay.
They must have missed that one, too.
Thank you very much,
But the
Peter.
Dragon Pizza
Appreciate
guy
it.
said he asked the parents 3 times, and then before he asked him to leave.
You
so.
can't tell them on the air what you told them off the air. I can't remember. Is this-
No, we're not. We're
Okay,
off the
okay,
record.
sorry.
Off the record, sworn to secrecy.
It's her own daughter.
She said that's
goes
right.
Off
No
the
comment.
record
No comment.
this morning.
Okay, we have a lot of people that like to make fun of you, Jim.
Okay.
Here's an anonymous texter. Dear Jim, as a preteen, I am advocating for brownie-free establishments.
That's
How do
a
you
good
like
one.
that?
Thank you.
And somebody else says, Jim stands up because he's afraid, otherwise he gets stuck in his chair.
Oh, that's so funny. By the way, the reason for that story.
And
speaking of, we should tell this.
You got stuck in
Since
this-
we asked John
That's
about
right.
opening day many years ago, we were complaining on the radio at the other station. We were the only media hosts who didn't have tickets to the Red Sox playoffs.
Right.
And the then head of SBLI, do you remember?
Yes. Yep.
Was kind enough, called us after the show and said, "I'm going to give you my 2 box seats because I feel bad for you." That was the good news. Here was the bad news. The seats are very narrow. And when people were getting up to cheer, who was the one person in the stadium who was not getting up to cheer?
It was the 7th inning stretch.
And why did I not get up?
Because you couldn't get out of your chair.
I couldn't get out of my chair. They were very narrow.
They brought in-
So what do we ultimately use, Margaret?
They brought in the Pam oil spray.
Yeah, he sprayed the chair and then I got out. It's not much of an
It
exaggeration.
was very
actually.
embarrassing.
It's fairly
Here's
close
one more person making fun of you.
Oh, good.
So
Keep
let me
reading.
get this straight. Jim wants no kids at the pizza place, but last week on Am I the A-hole, he was okay bringing kids to the friend's house when the friend specifically said it was a no kids party. Typical liberal hypocrite.
Yeah, okay.
There you go.
Block that guy. So, Megan, you're in red. You're next on Boston Public Radio. How are you, Megan? What's up?
Hi, Megan.
Hi, I'm fine, thank you. How are you?
We're excellent, thank you.
Let me just turn off my radio here.
Thanks.
Hi, so I'm calling. My ex-husband and I owned a high-end restaurant group, and I always took our kids out in the restaurants from the time they were young and taught them how to behave. I don't think it's a problem to have kids in nice places, but when you do, you also can't order a chicken and sub everything out and get mashed potatoes and split it 6 ways. If you're going to take them there, they need to behave properly all the way around. And it's you wouldn't go with your adult friends to a place like Chuck E. Cheese and be drinking alcohol and do things that are inappropriate. There's places for kids and there's places for adults. And if you have to, go somewhere with your kids, they need to behave properly.
So did you have rules in place, Megan? You and your former husband in the restaurant, did you have rules or no? Other than
but
behave
I think it's
well.
excellent that the man who owned the pizza shop spoke up, because it really is about protecting your guests. You have paying customers, and everyone's expected to behave, no matter the age. This is a society. You don't go and misbehave anywhere just because it's a restaurant. It doesn't give you free reign to let your kids run wild.
Megan, that was a great call. Thank you for making it. I hope you're back in the business someday. Thank you much for your call. 877-301-8970.
Jan in the River is in favor of a yellow card, red card system when parents allow their kids to misbehave. $50 surcharge for yellow card, $100 for a red card.
That's a soccer thing.
Yeah,
correct?
that's a soccer thing. I think.
By the way,
yeah.
you haven't. I don't. If you voiced an opinion, pick a number over $30.
I did. I told
okay,
you.
for an entree. An expensive.
I don't think you want children in after 7 or 7:30 in a nice restaurant where you're going out.
What are you talking about?
It's different. I mean, you can go to. Somebody said text before. Go to Chuck E. Cheese or go
Why
to
should they
McDonald's.
go to an expensive restaurant? As you said, a lot of people go out rarely. They save up. It's a special event. Why even take the chance? Why does a kid need to go to a restaurant like that?
Because if you're going, that's an expensive restaurant.
Yeah, I'm talking about an expensive.
Don't bring kids to an expensive restaurant.
Well, how about barring kids from an? Whoa!
I don't think we need to. You want to mandate.
I do want to mandate.
You want to mandate. I don't think we have to bar them. I just think it's a wise thing not to do. Not to bring them.
You know what you do?
What do you do?
If they do bring kids, you cuff them one time and kick them out. It's going to be preventive. People are not going to do it again.
Deport them, Jim. That's what you do.
Well,
you deport them.
That's what someone might do.
Tina in the car. Thank you for calling.
Hello, Tina in the car.
Hi, yes. First time, long time, and I just want to say I absolutely love your show.
Oh, thank you.
You have kept me sane through 4 years of the first Trump administration, and I'm not sure if
And
I'll
the next
last.
8 years, true. That's right. Okay, well, Tina, that's very nice of you to say. Thank you. Thank you very much. What's up?
So here's my comment. I would much rather be seated next to well-behaved children who are playing with toys or watching an iPad as they're eating with their parents than really loud, obnoxious, drunk people who are talking so loudly that everyone in the restaurant can hear what they are saying.
This is a
who
fabulous
have
call.
obnoxious cackling laughs. I would really much prefer being seated next to a very nice family with well-behaved children.
I hear. I think that is a beautiful and perfect call there, Tina. What do you do, by the way? What do you do if someone's at the next table? Marjorie and I were out to lunch one day planning for a show, and there was somebody at the next table who was talking. Was it Golden Temple? Where were we? Wherever we were. And there was somebody talking on their cell phone really loudly.
Oh, yeah.
And one of us, not Marjorie, went over politely
Yes, you
and
did.
asked them to stop doing that. And after they gave me the finger, they actually were, what'd you do about the drunk person at the next table? What would you do?
I actually have asked to be moved on occasions, and have been accommodated by the restaurant. I haven't generally spoken to people, but I have asked to be moved. We actually had dinner at a very, very nice restaurant in the private dining room with our because we thought it would be quiet and lovely to have our family celebration there. And they then seated a group of 6 20-something-year-olds who were so loud and so obnoxious. We ended up asking to be moved to the regular part of the restaurant.
There you go.
I admire your boldness, Tina. Thank you for your first call. Please make another one soon.
Now, here's the other side of the coin. We were at a brewery in Rhode Island about 7 o'clock. A young couple walked in with a large group of their friends, plus their young kids, and set up 2 tables for a birthday party for their 2-year-old, and proceeded to let about a dozen of their children, the little 2-year-olds up to 6 and 7 and 8-year-olds, run around the brewery, creating complete havoc. This despite a sign on the wall saying, no children under 13 after 6 p.m.
How are your kids when they were little, by the way?
I don't remember taking them out to any fancy restaurants.
How about
when they were little.
non-fancy restaurants?
Well, that's different. I mean, you go
How'd
to...
they behave?
Well, we spent a lot of time at the ball pit at
Oh, so did
McDonald's.
mine, yeah.
Where you could the kids could go in those play. That was so terrible to get rid of all those during the pandemic. Remember when your kids, you could go sit there for an hour and a half, and in McDonald's, kids be climbing around
Yeah, they had
the
to get
structure.
9 shots after they got out of
Well,
the
you might
balls
have a
is
little
the
thing, and then of
problem,
course Jim got stuck in one of those things
Let's
too.
not do that. I did get stuck.
That was awful. And somebody else makes a point here that lots of parents don't have sit-down dinners every night with their kids anymore, for either because they're working or because the kids are in sports or something. And one of their theories is children don't learn and parents don't teach them how to be table manners and courtesy when they're eating at their own house.
That's an excellent point.
Yeah, that's a good, excellent point.
Where
Chris
do you wanna go?
Chris from Boxford,
Hey,
thank you for
Chris.
calling.
Hey, you two. Thanks for taking the call.
Thank you.
I have 2 young boys, 4 and 1. My opinion is we usually go out to dinner between, like 4 and 6 o'clock.
There you go. Early
That
bird
time is
special.
Reserved for, it's reserved for madness with kids and the elderly. And the elderly can't hear the kids yelling through a wall.
There you go.
I just think anyone that's eating dinner at that time should expect some mayhem. That's my opinion.
By the way, that is a point. That is another point we haven't addressed. If they do allow kids at an early hour, like Chris takes his kids from 4 to 6, those adults who go are on notice that there's going to be a little bit of chaos. Not as much chaos as at Dragon's Pizza, But that's a wonderful call. Chris, thanks. You ever been to Dragon's Pizza, by the way?
Yes.
I know, but have you ever eaten the pizza?
I absolutely have. I've been there several times.
actually.
The pizza is great and the drinks are great, and it's in a great location. Mitch in New Bedford said if they just serve beer and wine at McDonald's or Five Guys, this would not be a problem. There you go. Okay. And another texter says, if I'm paying $30 an hour, the outrageous going rate for one kid for a babysitter in order to have a date night with my partner,
Great point.
I certainly should not have to put up with other people's kids at the next table. And that's the expensive restaurant thing, right? If you're going out for a special occasion, you get kids, you had to hire a sitter. I mean, you're going out to get a reprieve from the crying and the screaming, and then if somebody crying and screaming next to you, it's a little upsetting. Let's go to John in Natick. What do you think, John?
We have a minute.
Hey, thank you so much. First-time caller.
Thank you.
And Jim, you're my favorite curmudgeon. You know what a curmudgeon is, by the way.
I do actually know what it is. But
we all do.
It's an optimist who's been disappointed too many times.
Oh, I like that, actually. Thank you.
Very good.
I think. Go ahead.
And Marjorie, you are the epitome of grace for putting up with such a curmudgeon.
Oh,
thank you, John. Call anytime.
Thank you. Okay.
I lament the days when, growing up, we would go out to dinner with our parents very, very rarely, and it was always a special occasion. We got dressed up, and I think that set the tone for good behavior. The last comment around sit-down dinners at home, I think that goes a long way toward teaching table manners and then extending that out to a restaurant. But I think the days of the modern day where people will wear sweats and shorts and so on at a nice restaurant is kind of too bad, and it sets a disappointing tone. And I think dressing up to go out to dinner really sort of sets a better tone in general.
Thank you for that. We got to go. Thank you. By the way, I've been calling it Dragon's Pizza.
It's Dragon Pizza.
Dragon Pizza. My
UPS, the UPS driver Woody, who emails us all the time, texts us all the time. He loves Dragon Pizza. And Rebecca in Florida has a good idea. Just stick the kids in a dark room so they can practice using their miner's hats.
Oh, that's good.
That is Jim's solution for kids walking to school in the dark in the morning.
Okay, so here's what we guessed. Jared Bowen's about to join us.
Oh, Jared Bowen.
Jared does not want a kid in the same zip code as him when he's having a meal. Is that correct, Jared Bowen?
That might be somewhat very
Exactly. One honest person in the crowd. How do you really feel about kids in a restaurant?
Well, I can tell you the last time this happened, we talked about Luna. I was at the Shed in New York City, and I'm sitting there having lunch with my friend in this wide open space at the Shed, and then this whole group with this entire entourage comes in of parents and kids. The parents sit on one side, the kids sit on the other side. Again, whole wide open space, but they decided to be on either side of my friend, and then the parents start yelling at the kids through us, not over us, through us, and then the parents are yelling at their kids to put down their phones. That's like throwing gasoline on the fire, because if the kids have to put down their phones, then they're misbehaving even more. Again, just until they're 18, no.
Right, leave them home. Beautifully put. What are you doing on the show today there, Jared Bowen?
I do like some kids. I don't want to come
By the way, that guy you had on yesterday, whoever, the cabaret, what was the name of that cabaret character?
Kim David Smith.
He was fabulous.
He was fabulous.
He was fabulous. But go ahead.
His new album, Mostly Marlena.
It was a great interview. Go ahead.
So today is the 35th anniversary of the Isabella Stewart Gardner Museum heist. So we'll talk with its Director of Security and Director of Conservation about the theft. We'll get the latest and thoughts on when the paintings will come back. Notice I say when. We'll also speak with, I don't know if you have both had the chance to check out Celtic City, the new HBO docuseries. It is fantastic. I've watched the first 2 episodes of
Celtic City?
Celtic City.
About the Celtics.
About the Celtics.
That's why it's called Celtic City.
Put that on my list.
What else, Jared?
It goes back and forth in time. It's fabulous. We'll speak with its director. And then it's Bach Birthday Bash out at Music Worcester, which is celebrating Bach this weekend.
Thank you for that. And speaking of that, Jared Bowen, listen to him at 2 o'clock. Can I say quickly, last night I emceed a sold-out show premiere at the Somerville Theater of a movie called Any Day Now. Remember we had the director, Eric Aronson, on the air?
Yes, we did.
Stars Paul Guilfoyle and other people. It's a fabulous film, quote, inspired by the Gardner theft, and it is playing this week in limited engagement at Arsenal Mall. Check it out. It's called AnyDayNowFilm.com.
Okay, you done?
I think I am.
We are done as well, and thank
We
you
are
very
really
much for
done,
listening
yep.
to another edition of Boston Public Radio. Thanks to people that came down to the Boston Public Library. Really
Thank you all.
appreciate
Appreciate
it.
it.
You can keep up with us 24/7 by way of our podcast or check out our TikTok page at Boston Public Radio. I want to mention that NASA astronauts Sunita Williams and Butch Wilmer are on their way back to Earth. If you missed our October interview with Sunita Williams live from the space station, you can check it out at our YouTube channel, youtube.com/GBH News. Tomorrow, we're going to be back here with Harvard National Security expert Juliette Kayyem, author Marc Dunkelman on his new book, Why Nothing Works, GBH's Jared Bowen, and natural son Montgomery. We want to thank our crew, Zoe Matthews, Aidan Conley, Nicole Garcia, Hannah Loss. Additional support from Tasman Vidal, our engineer. Oh, she did the great thing on Women's History Month
She
today.
did.
Thank you,
Great.
Tamsin. Our engineer is John LeClaw Parker. Our executive producer is Jane Bologna. Special thanks to our
What's trending? What's interesting?
Classical Radio Boston is WCRB FM 99.5 HD1 Lowell, Boston, WGBH FM HD2 Boston, WCAI FM HD2 Woods Hole, WJMF FM HD1 Smithfield, Providence, and at classical.org.
Just about 2 o'clock Tuesday afternoon. Thanks for listening. I'm Greg Farisi. Later today, we will hear Schubert's Unfinished Symphony, and I've got Yo-Yo Ma and Emmanuel Axe with a little more Beethoven for you.